Please help my sister. Annie Carter stepped in front of Victor just as he came out of the elevator. Please, I don't have time, Victor said to his assistant, not slowing down. Move the presentation up 10 minutes, and tell Margaret I want the first 3 looks ready when I walk in. Yes, Mr. Hale, the assistant said, already typing. Annie spoke immediately. Please, she said, stepping into the path of his group. Please, sir, my sister. A young assistant in a black blazer moved quickly between them. Miss, you can't be here. Annie stopped so abruptly her worn sneakers slipped against the polished floor. I know, but I need help. The assistant looked her over quickly, from the oversized coat to the old canvas bag hanging from her shoulder. Young lady, it appears you don't have an invitation badge for today's event, do you? This is a private selection event, the assistant said, keeping her voice low but sharp. You're not on the access list. Annie looked past her toward Victor. He had taken another step, still half turned toward the elevator bank, his attention already leaving her behind. My sister is upstairs, Annie said. Her voice shook. Something happened to her. The assistant's expression tightened. Mr. Hale won't be handling this. There are thousands of people who want his attention every day. You understand what I mean, don't you? The assistant held out one hand, not touching Annie yet, but close enough to make the warning clear. You need to go to security. I tried. Annie's fingers tightened around the strap of her old canvas bag. They wouldn't listen. Before Annie could say more, a woman's voice behind Victor said, Hello. Margaret Sloan crossed the lobby in a cream-colored suit, a small smile already set on her face. She passed her eyes over Annie as if the girl were no more than a misplaced delivery box, then turned directly to Victor. Good afternoon, Mr. Hale, Margaret said smoothly. Everyone has arrived. The meeting will begin in 10 minutes. Victor glanced at her, then back at Annie. This young woman said her sister is upstairs and needs help. Margaret's smile did not move. Yes, sir. I'm sorry for the disturbance. This is an internal staff matter. No, Annie said, trembling. No, it's not. My sister is hurt. You're the only one who can help her. Margaret's eyes shifted toward her. The smile stayed, but the warmth vanished from it. Annie, she said, her voice low and tight. Lower your voice. Annie took half a step back before she could stop herself. Margaret turned to Victor again. Mr. Hale, I apologize for the disruption. Her silver blonde hair was pulled back neatly. Her smile was small, practiced, and cold at the edges. Annie's stomach dropped. Margaret stopped beside Victor but looked at Annie say, Annie, this is not appropriate. Annie took another step back before she could stop herself. Margaret turned fully to Victor. Leah Carter is an assistant on my floor. She's been under stress lately. Her sister sometimes comes by after hours. Though we've discouraged it, I'm afraid this is a family matter becoming a workplace interruption. If you don't help, no one else can. Please believe me, Annie said. And she will receive it, Margaret said, still smiling. But not by creating a scene in front of Mr. Hale on the most important day of the season. The phrase creating a scene landed exactly where Margaret meant it to. Victor looked at Margaret. Why would one of your employees believe no one else will help her unless I do? Margaret's eyes flickered. I haven't been informed of an injury. She's in the storage room, Annie said. I found her there. Margaret sighed. Annie, your sister has had episodes of exhaustion before. This is what happens when people take on more than they are ready to handle. Annie's hands began to tremble. He turned to the guard. Send medical to Studio C storage. Now. The guard straightened. Yes, sir. Margaret stepped in quickly. Mr. Hale, I can handle this. The selection committee is waiting upstairs. The billionaire looked at Annie. If someone is injured, you should call 911. Annie swallowed. She said not to tell. She said Miss Sloan would ruin us. Margaret's smile disappeared for half a second. Victor saw it. Annie saw that he saw it. Annie forced the word out, her voice cracking. Enough, Margaret said. Let her speak, Victor said. Margaret turned toward the billionaire, the movement small but firm. Mr. Hale, you do not need to spend your time on this. I assure you, I can handle it. Then she looked back at Annie. I will send someone to check on your sister, all right? Now go. Stop causing trouble. Annie shook so badly she had to grip the strap of her bag with both hands. My sister is really hurt. I'm not causing trouble. If I'm lying, I'll take full responsibility. I'll accept any punishment you give me. His assistant leaned closer. Sir, we really don't have time. Victor finally turned to her. For a moment, the whole lobby seemed to wait for his answer. Then he said, make time. The assistant went still. Victor faced Annie again. Take me to your sister, Margaret said. Victor, he lifted one hand, not high, but enough. No one leaves the design floor, he said. No one touches Studio C. No files are moved, no samples are altered, and no one speaks to Leah Carter before medical sees her. Margaret's face went carefully blank. Annie stood there, still shaking, still afraid. But something inside her shifted. But Victor Hale had stopped walking, and for Leah, that was enough to make Annie move. She turned toward the elevators, her voice low now, almost a whisper. This way, sir. Victor turned toward the elevator. Let's go. Mrs. Evelyn Brooks stood near the hallway entrance with a cleaning cart beside her. Esh, baby, what happened to you? Evelyn asked. What's wrong? Victor looked toward Evelyn. Do you know this young woman? Yes, sir, Evelyn said. That's Annie Carter, Leah's sister. The assistant beside Victor gave a tight smile. Mr. Hale, we're already behind schedule. Victor glanced at her. I'm aware. Then he looked back at Evelyn. What do you know about a young woman named Leah? Evelyn's hands rested on the handle of the cleaning cart. Most nights, she's here long after the rest of that floor has gone home. Quiet girl, polite, always says good evening, even when she's so tired she can barely stand. And this one waits for her. She nodded toward Annie. Never bothers anybody, the assistant said. That still doesn't authorize her to enter a restricted floor. No, ma'am, Evelyn said. It doesn't, but fear will make a child run past rules when the rules don't open the right doors. Victor pressed the elevator button. You come with us, Mrs. Brooks. Margaret's lips thinned. Mr. Hale, surely that isn't necessary. Then she softened her voice, the way she did when she wanted her words to sound reasonable instead of controlling. Sir, instead of spending your valuable time here, I can handle this matter myself and give you a clear report afterward. Victor did not look at her. She knows the girl. Margaret's smile tightened. And they know who you are, Mr. Hale. People want your attention. Very badly. Victor turned. Enough, he said. I want to hear the details of what happened to the young woman named Leah. Margaret held his gaze for 1 second, then lowered her eyes with the kind of obedience that was really calculation. Victor turned slightly toward Annie. Tell me exactly where your sister is. Storage room behind Studio C, Annie said. Past the sample racks. There's a gray door with a broken label. How long ago did you find her? I don't know. Maybe 15 minutes. Maybe less. Annie hated that she did not know. Time had become strange after she saw Leah on the floor. She was breathing. She opened her eyes. But she couldn't stand. Victor looked at his assistant. Medical? On the way, sir. Security? 2 guards moving to the design floor. No one enters that room before medical, unless Annie says her sister is in immediate danger. The assistant nodded, but she did not like taking instructions from a girl in worn sneakers. Annie could tell. Margaret folded her hands in front of her. Mr. Hale, with respect, Leah has been struggling for weeks. She's talented at basic support work, but she becomes overwhelmed. Annie doesn't understand the pressure of a creative department. Annie looked at the floor. Ma'am, Annie said, trembling. My sister has always done what you told her to do. Her own work. And the work she was never supposed to be doing in the first place. Margaret's head snapped toward her. That was her responsibility. Annie flinched, but she did not stop. Her voice came out uneven, each word forced past fear. Her responsibility was to design clothes. And the reward should have been recognition. Not being picked apart. Not being pushed down. Not having her name crossed out of every chance she earned. Margaret lifted one hand and pointed straight at Annie's face. I didn't know a girl like you could invent stories so well, she said. Is that what this is about? Unpaid bills? Or did your sister's ambition to become a real designer make her put you up to this? The words hit Annie so hard she forgot to breathe. A girl like you. Evelyn's face tightened. Miss Sloane. Margaret did not look at her. No, Mrs. Brooks. I am tired of pretending this is innocent. This young woman has entered a restricted building, interrupted the chairman, and made claims she cannot support. There are procedures for employees who feel mistreated. There are proper channels. Annie's eyes burned, but she kept them open. Proper channels don't work when the person hurting you owns the channel. Victor turned to Margaret. You need to explain that clearly to me. Margaret's mouth tightened. Mr. Hale, with all respect, this girl is emotional. She doesn't understand how assignments are distributed in a professional design environment. Victor held her gaze. Then it seems I need to review how management is being handled in this place. For a moment, Annie almost believed him. Annie lifted her eyes. Then maybe you haven't seen everyone, sir. Annie saw one young intern lower her eyes when Margaret stepped out. Victor noticed that too. Studio C, he said. 2 guards were already waiting near the end of the hall. The assistant moved toward them, but Victor raised one hand. Annie stopped with her hand on the handle. For a second, she was back inside the room alone, kneeling beside Leah, hearing her sister whisper, "Don't say anything. She'll ruin us." Victor's voice came from behind her, lower now. "Miss Carter?" Annie pushed the door open. Leah Carter lay curled on the floor near a tipped-over bin, one hand pressed against her stomach, her face pale beneath the harsh ceiling light. Victor's expression changed at once. "Hurry," he said, his voice sharp now. "Call emergency services for her. Now." The assistant pulled out her phone. One of the guards stepped back and spoke into his radio. Evelyn covered her mouth with one hand, then lowered herself carefully beside Annie. Annie dropped to her knees. Leah, I brought help." Leah's eyelids fluttered, her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Victor crouched near her, careful not to touch her without permission. "Miss Carter, can you hear me? What happened to you? Who did this?" Margaret moved in too quickly. "What happened to you?" she said, her voice high with forced concern. "Why wasn't I informed?" "Leah, don't say anything right now. I'll handle this for you." Leah's eyes shifted toward Margaret, and the fear in them was clearer than any answer. Annie took her sister's hand. "Leah, it's me. You're safe. Mr. Hale is here." Leah swallowed. Her voice came out broken, barely more than breath. "The designs," she whispered. "Margaret, If this moment touched your heart, please like this video, comment where you are watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional and inspiring stories. "I remember all of it," Annie said. Victor Hale did not answer right away. He stood in the hallway outside Studio C with the blue folder under one arm, watching her as if he were deciding whether memory could be treated like evidence. Around them, the design floor had gone too quiet. People sat at work tables without working. A steam iron hissed somewhere and then shut off. Down the hall, the elevator doors closed after Leah's stretcher, taking the only person Annie wanted to follow. Margaret Sloan adjusted the cuff of her cream jacket. "Mr. Hale, this has gone far enough. The girl is upset. Her sister is on her way to medical care. The responsible thing now is to let HR conduct a proper review." Victor looked at her. "A proper review by people who report to you?" Margaret's mouth tightened. "By people who understand the department. Then we'll add people who understand records." Victor turned to his assistant. "Where is Marcus Reed?" "On his way, sir. Daniel Cross is coming up from legal." "Good. Conference room B. Now." Annie stayed where she was. "I should go with Leah." Victor's voice softened, but only slightly. "You can call the hospital from my office once we know where they're taking her. Right now, your sister asked you not to leave the drawings." That was true, and it hurt because it was true. Leah had been pale, barely able to speak, but she had still thought of the folder. Not herself, not the ambulance. The folder. Annie nodded. Margaret stepped closer to her. "Annie, think carefully. You're 18. You don't work here. You don't understand what kind of accusations you're making." Annie looked at the woman's hand, the manicured finger, the wedding band-sized ring she wore, though no one had ever heard of a husband. "I understand what stealing is." A few heads turned. Margaret's eyes sharpened. "Careful." Victor spoke before Annie could shrink back. "Miss Sloan, you will not address her again unless I ask you to." For a second, Annie thought Margaret might refuse. Then Daniel Cross appeared from the elevator, walking fast with a leather portfolio tucked under one arm. He was in his mid-40s, neat, tired-looking, and already unhappy. "Mr. Hale," he said, "I was told there's an allegation involving creative ownership." "There is a woman on her way to the hospital," Victor said. "There is a folder of sketches. There is a senior director accused by name, and there is a collection about to be presented under what may be the wrong credit. I want legal hold in place immediately. Daniel glanced at Margaret. On the whole collection? On everything connected to Quiet Fire, Still Standing, Leah Carter, Margaret Sloan, Studio C, and the storage room. Daniel's face changed. He understood the size of it now. Yes, sir. Conference room B sat behind glass walls near the pattern department. It was not meant for crisis. It had a long white table, 12 chairs, a screen on one wall, and a tray of untouched, bottled water. Victor placed the blue folder in the middle of the table but did not open it again. Annie sat because her knees had started to shake. Evelyn took the chair beside her. Margaret remained standing until Victor looked at her. Then she sat too, straight-backed and smooth as a blade. Marcus Reed arrived with a laptop pressed to his chest. He was younger than Annie expected, with rolled sleeves, black-framed glasses, and the cautious look of a man who fixed problems for powerful people and knew better than to become one himself. You asked for access logs, sir? I did, Victor said. But first, Miss Carter is going to tell us what she remembers. All eyes moved to Annie. Her mouth went dry. Evelyn leaned slightly toward her. Just start where you know, baby. Don't decorate it. Truth doesn't need ribbon. Annie held on to that. She called it Still Standing, Annie said. Not Quiet Fire. Leah said it was about women who kept going even when nobody gave them credit for surviving. Margaret gave a soft laugh. That sounds touching, but themes are not ownership. Victor did not look at her. Let her finish. Annie opened the blue folder with careful fingers. The first sketch showed the white suit. This one was first. Leah drew it after a fitting ran late. I remember because the vending machine took my last dollar and Mrs. Brooks gave me crackers from her bag. Evelyn nodded. Peanut butter ones. Annie almost smiled, but the feeling passed quickly. Leah said the shoulders had to be strong but not mean. She said women shouldn't have to become cruel to be taken seriously. Victor looked at the sketch. Date? March 12, a Tuesday. It rained. The ceiling leaked near the south windows and someone put a trash can under it. Marcus typed. Facilities ticket shows a leak on 12, South Studio, March 12. Margaret shifted in her chair. Annie turned the next page. The black dress came after Mama's death anniversary. Leah didn't want it to look like a funeral dress. She said grief shouldn't make women look small. Daniel wrote something down. The red coat, Annie said, touching the page. Came from our mother's church coat. The left cuff was torn. Leah copied the tear into the cut of the sleeve. Not exactly, but enough that I knew. She said worn doesn't mean weak. Worn means it lasted. Victor's eyes stayed on the page longer that time. Margaret crossed her arms. Emotional associations do not establish authorship. Assistants gather inspiration all the time. Senior directors develop it into work. Annie looked up. Then why did you tell Leah to stop putting dates on her sketches? The room went still. Margaret's face emptied. I never said that. You did, Annie said. Studio C, 2 weeks ago. You said dates make junior staff confused about ownership. Marcus stopped typing. Daniel looked up from his notes. Victor turned to Marcus. Camera audio? Marcus shook his head. No audio in design rooms, sir. Video only in hallways and common spaces. Annie said. She was standing by the glass wall. Leah was at the end table. I was near the sample shelves. Miss Sloan had a black portfolio under her arm. Marcus typed again. I can check hallway footage outside Studio C for that date if we narrow it. April 6, Annie said. It was the day after Leah paid rent late because her paycheck was short. Margaret leaned forward. This is absurd. No, Victor said. It is specific. Annie looked down again, but this time not from shame. She was searching. Her mind had always kept things. Receipts, faces, times, colors, small changes in people's voices. Leah called it Annie's filing cabinet. At school, teachers called it remarkable. At home, it was how Annie remembered which bill had to be paid first. There's another drawing, Annie said. Not in this folder. Margaret's eyes flickered. Victor noticed. Where? Annie hesitated. Leah had hidden it because she was afraid. If Annie said the wrong thing, if she led them to nothing, Margaret would smile that smile, and everyone would remember Annie as the girl who wasted a billionaire's afternoon. Evelyn touched her wrist. Breathe. Annie did. Mannequin 17, she said. Leah tucked a sketch into the lining. She said if Miss Sloane took the folder, at least one original would still be where only someone who knew her work would look. Victor stood. Take us there. Margaret rose too quickly. Mr. Hale, this is turning into a spectacle. Then stop performing, Victor said. No one moved for half a second. Then Marcus grabbed his laptop. Daniel took the folder, and Annie led them out of the conference room. The design floor watched without watching. Annie felt every glance, but something had changed. She was still scared. Her voice still shook, but fear had begun to make room for anger, and anger had a spine. Mannequin 17 stood near the back of Studio C, half-dressed in muslin, its linen torso marked with pinholes. Annie knelt and lifted the loose lining at the base. Nothing. Her heart dropped. Margaret exhaled behind her. Annie searched again, fingers moving along the seam. There was a small slit near the stand, hidden under a fold. She reached inside and felt paper. She pulled it free. A pencil sketch, creased, smudged, signed in the corner. Leah Carter. Marcus leaned in. Original paper. No scan marks. Daniel took a photo before anyone touched it further. Victor looked at the sketch, then at Margaret. How many more will we find? Margaret's voice was cold now. You are making a mistake. Victor closed his hand around the edge of the evidence sleeve Daniel had brought. No, he said. I think I'm finding one. At the far end of the room, the elevator chimed. Everyone turned. A young man stepped out, carrying a garment bag marked Quiet Fire M. Sloane. He stopped when he saw the group, then slowly lowered the bag as if he had walked into a room where the weather had changed. Annie stared at the label. Still standing was inside that bag. Leah's work. Leah's nights. Leah's name, crossed out before it ever reached the light. Victor saw her looking. Open it, he said. Open it, Victor said. The young man holding the garment bag looked at Margaret first. That small glance told Annie more than any confession could have. People did not look at Margaret for permission because they respected her. They looked because they were afraid of what happened when they moved without it. Margaret's voice stayed smooth. That sample is for the selection room. It hasn't been steamed. Victor did not turn. Open it, the young man swallowed. Yes, sir. He laid the garment bag across the nearest work table and unzipped it with both hands. Inside was a white suit, clean-lined, sharp at the shoulder, the kind of piece that made people stand differently just by looking at it. Annie knew it before the fabric was fully out of the bag. She knew the slope of the lapel, the narrow waist, the cuff Leah had stayed up half the night adjusting because she said it had to look strong without looking cruel. Her throat closed. That's hers, Annie whispered. Margaret exhaled through her nose. A white suit is hardly a signature, Annie. No, Annie said, stepping closer. But that cuff is. Victor looked at her. Explain. Annie reached out, then stopped before touching the jacket. She remembered Daniel's careful photographs, Marcus's records, all the grown-up rules that seemed to matter only after somebody powerful decided they did. Leah said if she ever got a real sample made, she would hide her initials inside the left cuff. Not where buyers could see it, just where she would know. Margaret gave a short laugh. That is a sweet story. Victor looked at the young man. Your name? Caleb, sir. Caleb Ortiz. Sample coordination. Turn the left cuff inside out. Caleb hesitated again, then did it. The room seemed to lean forward. Inside the cuff, stitched in pale thread so fine it almost disappeared against the lining, were two letters. Le, Chi. For a moment, nobody spoke. Annie pressed one hand to her mouth. It was not surprise. It was grief and relief arriving together. Leah had told the truth. Leah had found one tiny place where Margaret's name could not reach. Victor bent closer. Who stitched this? Caleb shook his head. I don't know, sir. Sample room gets notes from design. We follow the packet. Whose packet? Caleb glanced at Margaret, then down at the table. Miss Sloane's. Margaret's tone hardened. Because I am the senior creative director. All final packets move through my office. Marcus opened his laptop on the edge of the table. Mr. Hale, if the sample packet exists in the system, I can pull the upload history. Do it. Daniel Cross stepped beside Victor. We should preserve the garment as evidence. No further handling without documentation. Then document it, Victor said. Annie barely heard them. Her eyes stayed on the initials, L, C, two tiny letters in thread. Leah's whole life had been reduced to initials hidden where no one was supposed to look. Evelyn stood beside her. Your sister was smart. She was scared, Annie said. Both can be true. Margaret turned toward Annie. You should be at the hospital. Annie looked up. Margaret's face had changed. Not much. Not for anyone who did not know how to read danger. But Annie had learned early. She knew when a person smiled to cover a threat. She knew when a voice got soft because it was reaching for a knife. You care so much about your sister, Margaret said. Go be with her. Let the adults handle this. Victor answered before Annie could. Miss Carter stays. On what basis? On the basis that she identified evidence before anyone else in this room did. Marcus looked at his screen. Sir, Victor turned. What do you have? The sample packet for this suit was uploaded under Miss Sloane's account 3 days ago. Marcus typed again. But there's an earlier draft. Same file name structure, different author field. Leah Carter. Margaret's face went blank. That could be a template error. Marcus kept reading. Earlier draft was created on Leah Carter's workstation at 1:42 a.m. 2 weeks ago. It was accessed the next morning from Miss Sloane's office computer at 6:13 a.m. After that, the author field changed. Daniel's pen stopped. Changed by whom? Marcus swallowed. The system shows Miss Sloane's credentials. Margaret stood. This is outrageous. Anyone with administrative access could have used my credentials. Victor looked at her. Who has your credentials? No one, officially. Unofficially? She did not answer. Annie saw the young intern near the door lower her eyes again. She was small, maybe 21, with a pincushion strapped to her wrist. Her hands were shaking. Victor noticed her too. You? What's your name? The intern startled. Mia, sir. Do you know something about this? Mia looked at Margaret. Her face drained of color. Margaret said, Mia, choose your words carefully. Victor's voice cut in. No, you choose yours carefully. Mia, answer me. Mia's eyes filled. I don't know about Leah's suit. But Miss Sloane has asked me to log in for her before. She says it's faster. She gives me passwords to use if she's in a meeting. That is not unusual in a busy department, Margaret said quickly. Daniel looked at her. It is a security violation. The sentence landed hard. Margaret turned on him. Daniel, don't be dramatic. I'm being legal, he said. Victor straightened. Marcus, I want all access activity from Miss Sloane's account for the last year reviewed. Daniel, issue written notice now. No one deletes, edits, removes, shreds, scans, transfers, or renames any file or physical sketch tied to this collection. Daniel nodded. Understood. Margaret's composure cracked at the edge. You are treating me like a criminal because a poor girl and a frightened assistant want attention. Annie felt the words hit. But they did not knock her down this time. Victor's face went cold. I am treating you like an executive whose story keeps changing. Evelyn murmured. Lord have mercy. The young man Caleb carefully laid the suit back on the table. Annie watched him avoid Margaret's eyes. She wondered how many people in this room had known pieces of the truth and buried them under rent, student loans, medical bills, fear. She could not hate them for it. She understood fear. Fear had raised her almost as much as Leah had. Victor turned to Annie. You said you remember all of it. Start with the first time you saw your sister draw this suit. Annie looked at the white jacket. It was late. After midnight, Leah had been told to clean up after a fitting because someone from the senior team had dinner reservations. She was tired, but she wouldn't leave because she had an idea. I was sitting by the sample shelves eating crackers Mrs. Brooks gave me. Evelyn nodded. Peanut butter. Leah said the jacket had to look like a woman walking into a room that didn't save her a chair. Annie touched her own sleeve, grounding herself. She said the shoulders should be strong, not mean. She drew the cuff 3 times. The first was too plain. The second looked expensive, but empty. The third one had that hidden stitching. Victor listened without interrupting. Annie continued. She said people like us learn to put our names where they can't be laughed at. I told her that was sad. She said, No, Annie. It's practice. One day I'll put it where everybody can see. The room was silent. Even Margaret did not speak. Then Marcus's laptop chimed. He looked down, frowned, and clicked twice. Sir, there's something else. What? Quiet Fire wasn't just uploaded from Miss Sloane's account. The folder contains archived drafts from other employees. Different names, different years. Margaret moved toward him. That is confidential. Victor stepped between them. Sit down. She stopped. Marcus turned the laptop so Victor could see. There are subfolders. Interns. Assistants. Pattern makers. Some files were later submitted under senior staff projects. Daniel leaned in. How many? Marcus scrolled. Annie watched his face change. At least 17, he said. The number settled over the room like dust after a collapse. 17. Not one sister. Not one stolen suit. Not one tired assistant found on a storage room floor. Victor Hale looked through the glass wall at the design floor beyond it, at the people pretending not to listen, at the work tables full of fabric and sketches and quiet fear. When he spoke, his voice was lower than before. Bring them in. Margaret stared at him. Who? Victor looked back at her. Everyone whose name is in those folders. Everyone whose name is in those folders. Marcus looked at Victor as if he wanted to confirm he had heard correctly. All of them, sir? All of them. Daniel Cross closed his portfolio and stood straighter. Mr. Hale, before we gather employees, I recommend we define the scope. If this turns into a mass disclosure without preparation, we could expose the company to what? Victor asked. The truth? Daniel paused. To liability. Victor's eyes stayed on the laptop screen. We already have liability. We are deciding whether we also have a conscience. No one answered that. Margaret sat very still, her hands folded on the table. Annie had seen that kind of stillness before, though never in a suit that expensive. It was the stillness of a person waiting for the room to become uncertain again so she could take control of it. Mr. Hale, Margaret said, I understand the optics are troubling, but bringing frightened junior staff into this will only create confusion. Many of them won't understand what they contributed versus what was developed by leadership. Annie looked at the white suit on the table, at the initials hidden inside the cuff. Leadership. That was what Margaret called it when she took what others made and walked into better rooms with it. Victor looked at Marcus. Names. Marcus hesitated, then read from the folder list. Mia Alvarez, Denise Powell, Harriet Kim, Jordan Ellis, Priya Nair, Tomas Vega, Leah Carter. There are more. At the sound of her name, Mia, the young intern by the door, went pale. Victor turned to her. Miss Alvarez, you don't have to speak in front of anyone yet, but I need to know whether you recognize your name in that folder. Mia's eyes darted toward Margaret. Victor saw it. Look at me, not her. Mia swallowed. Yes, sir. I recognize it. What was taken? Margaret started to rise. This is inappropriate. Sit down, Victor said. She did. Mia's voice was barely steady. A jacket concept. From my graduate portfolio. I showed it during my internship review. Miss Sloane said it was promising, but immature. 2 months later, a version of it went into a capsule collection under her direction. Did you complain? Mia let out a small laugh with no humor in it. To who? That question did more to the room than a speech could have. Daniel stopped writing. Evelyn looked down at the floor. Annie felt her chest tighten because she knew the answer. To who? That was the wall. Poor people hit so often they learned to stop running toward it. Victor looked to Marcus. Bring the others. The assistant moved quickly now. Making calls. Sending messages. Pulling people from sewing rooms. Pattern tables. Sample storage. And lunch breaks. They had barely started. Within 10 minutes, Conference Room B and the hallway outside it filled with employees who did not usually get invited into rooms with glass walls. Some were young, some middle-aged, some old enough to have worked in fashion before half the executives learned how to pronounce couture. They came in aprons, sneakers, measuring tapes around their necks, pins still clipped to cuffs. They looked at Victor, then at Margaret, then at the floor. Annie stayed near the table with the white suit. She wanted to be at the hospital. She wanted Leah awake, safe, away from the woman sitting across the room. But Leah had said, don't let her put her name on them. So Annie stayed. Victor did not stand at the head of the table. He pulled out a chair and sat like he expected to listen. Some of you may have work inside files we just discovered, he said. You are not required to speak without counsel or HR representation. You will not be punished for speaking. Daniel, put that in writing. Daniel nodded and began typing on his phone. Margaret gave a tight smile. That's generous, Mr. Hale, but unnecessary. My team knows my door has always been open. A woman near the hallway, maybe in her 50s, laughed once before she could stop herself. Victor looked at her. Your name? Denise Powell, she said. Pattern department. What did you mean by that? Denise glanced around, then folded her arms. Her door is open when she wants something. Closed when you want credit. The air changed again, not loudly. It was more like a room realizing the lock had already been broken. Margaret's face hardened. Denise has had performance issues. Denise nodded. Every time I asked why one of my patterns showed up under somebody else's file, a young man stepped forward next. Tomas Vega, sample assistant. I built the sleeve structure for the blue dress. Miss Sloan told me it was technical labor, not creative work. Then I saw the same structure described in the presentation notes as her innovation. Another voice came from the doorway. She used my color story. A woman lifted her hand halfway. Harriet Kim. I was told to be grateful. She even looked at it. Mia wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. She told me nobody hires interns who cause trouble. One by one, the names from Marcus's screen became people. Not files. Not risk. People. Annie listened as they spoke in pieces. Nobody gave a perfect speech. Some contradicted dates. Some forgot names. Some cried and apologized for crying. That made it feel more real, not less. Truth did not arrive polished. It came in the voice of a woman who still had pins in her sleeve because she had been called out before finishing a hem. Margaret waited until 3 people had spoken, then leaned forward. Mr. Hale, this is becoming emotional contamination. Creative departments are collaborative. Junior staff often mistake participation for authorship. It happens in every serious house. Victor looked at Daniel. Is that a legal defense? Daniel's answer came slowly. Collaboration can complicate ownership, but unauthorized removal of credit, credential misuse, file alteration, intimidation, and misrepresentation of authorship are separate issues. Margaret stared at him. Daniel. He did not look at her. They are. Marcus turned his laptop toward Victor. I found another pattern. Several files were scanned from the late-night station near Studio C, then renamed from Miss Sloane's office before submission. Same sequence, repeated over years. How many? Still counting. Victor's jaw tightened. Keep counting. Annie felt a tug at her sleeve. Evelyn stood beside her with a paper cup of water. Drink, baby. I'm okay. No, you're standing. That's not the same. Annie took the cup. Her hands trembled so much the water shook. Evelyn lowered her voice. Your sister would be proud of you. She told me not to say anything. She told you that because she was afraid. Fear gives instructions too. Doesn't mean they're always right. Annie looked at Margaret, who was now speaking quietly into her phone, until Victor's assistant told her no calls were permitted. Margaret smiled as if this were all beneath her, but her fingers were white around the phone. Victor stood at last. Miss Sloane, your access to all design systems is suspended pending investigation. Your office will be sealed. Your devices will be collected by legal and IT. You will not contact employees in this department unless counsel is present. Margaret rose slowly. You are making a public mistake. No, Victor said. I made a private one years ago when I stopped walking these floors. That quiet admission did something to the employees. Annie saw it in their faces. Some were surprised. Some suspicious. Some almost angry. A powerful man admitting fault did not erase what had happened, but it took away one of the lies people used to survive, that nobody at the top would ever say it out loud. Margaret lifted her chin. You think this will save your image? Victor looked at her for a long moment. I'm not thinking about my image. For the first time, Annie believed him more than she doubted him. Then Marcus's laptop chimed again. He went still. Victor turned. What now? Marcus looked up. Someone just tried to delete a folder from Miss Sloane's office workstation. Margaret's eyes moved, just once, toward the hallway. Victor saw it. Lock down the office, he said. A guard stepped toward the door. but a crash sounded from somewhere down the hall. Not loud enough to be an accident. Loud enough to make every employee turn. Annie knew before anyone said it. Margaret had not been waiting for uncertainty. She had been waiting for a chance. Victor's voice cut through the room. Nobody moves those files. Nobody moves those files. Victor's order hit the room before the echo of the crash faded. For one breath, no one moved. Then the design floor broke into motion. A guard ran toward Margaret's office. Marcus grabbed his laptop and nearly tripped over a chair. Daniel Cross snatched the blue folder from the table and held it against his chest as if paper had suddenly become a living thing. Annie stood frozen, the cup of water trembling in her hand. Margaret did not run. That would have made her look guilty. She only turned her head toward the hallway, calm enough for anyone who had not been watching her eyes. Victor was watching her eyes. "Who is in your office?" he asked. Margaret's mouth opened, then closed. "I don't know. That is the first honest thing you've said today," Evelyn muttered. Victor looked at Marcus. "Can you stop the deletion from here?" Marcus was already typing. "Trying. If they're logged in locally, I can cut network access. But if they're deleting physical files or removing drives..." Another sound came from the hall. A drawer slammed. Someone shouted, "Hey, stop!" Victor moved, not fast like a young man trying to prove strength. Fast like a man who had made a decision and expected the world to get out of the way. Annie followed without thinking. Evelyn called her name, but Annie kept going. She did not know why, only that the files mattered, and Leah's name was somewhere inside them. Margaret reached for Annie's arm as she passed. "Stay out of this." Annie pulled free. "I've been out of it my whole life." The words surprised even her. Margaret's face sharpened, but Victor had already reached the corridor. At the far end, near a glass office with frosted lettering that read, "Margaret Sloan, Senior Creative Director." A young assistant stood cornered between a guard and a desk, clutching a slim external drive in one hand and a stack of folders in the other. A trash bin had tipped over, scattering shredded paper across the carpet. The assistant could not have been more than 24. Her name badge read Claire Bennett. Annie had seen her before, always walking 2 steps behind Margaret with coffee, garment bags, or a phone pressed to her ear. Claire's face was white. "I was told to clean the office." Victor stopped in the doorway. "By whom?" Claire looked past him. Annie did not need to turn to know Margaret had arrived. Margaret's voice came smooth and disappointed. "Claire, what are you doing?" The girl's eyes filled. "You told me to remove anything personal. I told you to organize my desk before the board arrived. I did not tell you to steal company materials." Claire looked as if the floor had disappeared beneath her. Annie felt something twist in her chest. She knew that look. It was the look people had when they realized the person giving orders was already preparing to deny them. Victor stepped into the office. "Put the drive and folders on the desk." Claire obeyed at once. Her hands shook so badly the folders slid sideways. Daniel arrived behind Victor. "No one touch anything else." Marcus, photograph the desk, the drive, the bin, the shredder, and the file drawers. Marcus lifted his phone and began recording. "On it." Margaret folded her arms. "This is becoming theatrical." Victor turned to her. "A deletion attempt was triggered from this office. Your assistant was removing files. The shredder is warm." He looked at Marcus. "Is it warm?" Marcus placed his hand near the machine without touching the blades. "Yes, sir." "Recently used." Claire began crying silently. She said if I didn't do it, I'd be finished. She said nobody would hire me if I made her look bad. Margaret's voice dropped. "Claire." The girl flinched. Victor saw it, and something hardened in his face. "Miss Bennett, you are not fired. You are not to speak with Miss Sloan privately. Daniel will take your statement with HR present and an independent witness." Claire wiped her cheek. "I didn't know what was in them." Margaret gave a small laugh. "Of course she didn't. She never knows much." That was when Annie stepped forward. "She knew enough to be scared of you." The office went quiet. Margaret looked at Annie as if the girl had grown taller without permission. "You seem very comfortable accusing people today." "No," Annie said. Her voice shook, but she did not look away. "I'm terrified. There's a difference." Victor's eyes moved to Annie for half a second, then back to the desk. "Marcus, can you access that drive safely?" "Yes, I'll clone it first. We don't work from the original." Daniel nodded. "Good. Chain of custody starts now. I'll document who touched it. Victor pointed to the filing cabinet. Open every drawer. The guard opened the first. It was filled with labeled folders, vendor contracts, show schedules, sample requests. The second held presentation copies. The third was locked. Margaret said, "That drawer contains confidential executive correspondence." Victor held out his hand. "Key. I don't carry it." "Then we open it another way." The guard looked at Victor, got a nod, and used a small tool from his belt. The lock gave after several seconds. Inside were blue, gray, and black folders packed tight. Some had names Annie recognized from Marcus's list. Mia Alvarez, Denise Powell, Tomas Vega, Leah Carter. Annie saw Leah's name and forgot to breathe. Daniel removed the folder carefully and laid it on the desk. Photograph first. Marcus took pictures, then Daniel opened it. Inside were sketches, scanned copies, notes, and printed emails. One email had Leah's name in the sender line. Another, dated 2 days later, forwarded the same attachment to Margaret's own private address, with a new subject, Quiet Fire Revised Concepts. Victor read it once. His jaw moved. Margaret's voice cut in. "Assistants send references all the time." Victor looked at the email again. This says, "Miss Sloan, I'm sorry for using my own title on the file. I changed it like you asked." Annie's hands curled into fists. Evelyn, who had come to the doorway, whispered, "Lord." Daniel removed another sheet. "There are handwritten notes here. Remove assistant attribution before board review. Initialed MS." Margaret's face had gone still. "That is not my handwriting." Victor looked at Daniel. "Preserve it." "Already doing it." Marcus, working at the laptop now, spoke without looking up. The deletion attempt was remote, triggered from a script on this workstation. It was set to wipe a folder called Legacy Drafts if an admin hold was placed. "Who installed it?" Victor asked. "Account says M. Sloan." Margaret snapped. "My credentials have clearly been compromised." Claire looked at her through tears. "You made me install that folder cleaner last month." Margaret turned on her. "Stop talking." Victor's voice came low. "No. She should keep talking." Claire hugged her arms around herself. She said it was for old versions. She said junior staff got attached to drafts, and it created confusion. She told me if legal ever froze files, I should run the cleanup. Daniel looked almost sick. "That is destruction of evidence." Margaret's control cracked. "Evidence of what?" "A few ambitious assistants who don't understand this business. I shaped their work. I made it usable. Without me, none of it would ever leave a folding table." Annie heard the whole floor outside go quiet. There it was, not a full confession, not in legal words, but the truth beneath every polished sentence. Without me. Folding table. Their work made valuable only when her name touched it. Victor stared at her. "You shaped it?" Margaret realized too late what she had said. "I mean, I supervised development." "No," Victor said. "You said you made their work usable." Margaret lifted her chin. "That is what leadership does." Victor looked toward the hallway, where the employees had gathered, silent and listening. "No. Leadership protects work. Theft relabels it." Annie felt tears rise but held them back. She would cry later. Maybe at the hospital beside Leah. Maybe in the bathroom, where nobody could see. Not now. Victor turned to the guard. "Escort Miss Sloan to conference room B. She is not to enter this office again. She is not to speak to staff. She is not to use a phone." Margaret stared. "You cannot treat me like this." "I can," Victor said. "And I should have done it sooner." As the guard moved beside her, Margaret looked at Annie. "This doesn't make your sister a designer," she said. Annie stepped closer, close enough to see the powder at the edge of Margaret's jaw, close enough to hear her breathing. "No," Annie said. "Her work does." For once, Margaret had nothing ready. Marcus lifted Leah's folder from the desk and handed it to Daniel. Victor looked at Annie. "Call the hospital," he said. "Tell your sister her name is still here." Annie took the phone with both hands. But for a moment she could not remember how to dial. Her sister's name is still here. The sentence should have comforted her. Instead, it made her chest ache. A name on paper did not erase Leah lying on a storage room floor. It did not pay for all the nights Leah came home too tired to eat. It did not undo the way Margaret had stood over her, speaking in that careful voice people used when they wanted cruelty to sound like policy. Evelyn touched Annie's shoulder. Hospital first. Annie nodded and called the emergency number the medic had given her before Leah was taken downstairs. A nurse answered after 2 rings. My sister came in from Valora House, Annie said. Leah Carter. I'm her sister. There was the sound of keys clicking. She's in evaluation. She's stable. The doctor is with her now. Stable. Annie closed her eyes. She had never loved a word so much. Can I talk to her? Not yet. But you can come to the emergency department waiting area. Are you on your way? Annie looked at Victor. He took the meaning at once. My car will take you. No, Annie said before she could think better of it. I can take the train. Victor's face did not change, but his voice lowered. Your sister asked you to protect the drawings. You did that. Now let the car take you to her. Annie wanted to refuse because accepting help from powerful people felt like stepping onto ice. But Leah was at the hospital, and pride was not worth a delayed train. Thank you, she said. Victor turned to Daniel. You keep the folder. Do not let it leave your hands. Marcus, copy the drive and send the clone to outside counsel, not internal only. Daniel looked up. Outside counsel? Yes. I don't know how long this has been happening, and I don't know who helped bury it. Margaret, standing between the guard and the doorway, gave a bitter smile. Now you distrust everyone. That is what happens when you let a frightened girl run your company. Victor looked at her. No, that is what happens when I realize I trusted the wrong executive. Her smile faded. Annie moved toward the hall, but Margaret's voice followed her. Your sister will regret this. Annie stopped. The words were not loud, but they carried. Employees along the hallway heard them. Daniel heard them. Marcus heard them. Victor heard them. Slowly, Annie turned back. Is that a threat? Margaret looked past her, as if Annie were something in the way. It is advice. Victor stepped closer to Margaret. Daniel. Add witness intimidation to your notes. Daniel typed without looking up. Already did. For the first time, a few people on the design floor looked directly at Margaret and did not look away. That was what Annie carried with her when she left. Not victory, not yet, but the first crack in fear. Victor's car waited in the service entrance below, not the front. Annie was grateful for that. She did not want the lobby again, not the polished stone, not the people who had watched her beg. Evelyn came with her, refusing to let her go alone. You don't have to, Annie said as the driver opened the door. I know, Evelyn said, climbing in slowly. That's why I'm doing it. The ride to the hospital passed in pieces. Traffic. Sirens somewhere else. Evelyn calling her daughter to say she would be late. Annie staring at her phone, waiting for it to ring. She thought of Leah's hands, always moving, folding fabric, sketching lines, counting bills, brushing Annie's hair before school when she was little, and their mother was already too sick to stand long. At the hospital, the emergency department smelled like disinfectant and vending machine coffee. Annie gave Leah's name at the desk. The nurse told them to wait. Waiting, Annie had learned, was its own kind of punishment. It gave the mind too much room. Evelyn sat beside her. You did good today. Annie shook her head. I should have done it sooner. You were a child. I'm 18. That is still young when the world is standing on your neck. Annie looked at her hands. Leah kept saying it would get better if she worked harder. She said people like Margaret couldn't ignore good work forever. Evelyn sighed. Good work gets ignored every day when nobody is forced to look at it. Before Annie could answer, a doctor stepped into the waiting area. Family for Leah Carter? Annie stood so fast Evelyn had to catch her bag. I'm here, sister. The doctor was a black woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a steady voice. I'm Dr. Monroe. Your sister is awake. She's dehydrated and exhausted. Her blood pressure was low when she arrived, and she has bruising on her hip and shoulder from the fall. We're running more tests, but right now she's stable. Can I see her? Yes. But keep it calm. She needs rest. Annie nodded too many times. Leah looked smaller in the hospital bed. The harsh storage room light was gone, replaced by a pale lamp near the wall. An IV line ran into her arm. Her hair was pulled away from her face, and her lips were dry. But her eyes found Annie the second she entered. Annie, Leah whispered. Annie reached the bed and took her hand. I'm here. Did you leave the folder? No. Mr. Hale has it. Legal has it. They found the suit too. Leah's eyes filled. The cuff? They saw it. A tear slipped down Leah's cheek, silent and quick. She said nobody would ever check there. She was wrong. Evelyn stood near the doorway, giving them space but not leaving. Leah turned her head slightly. Mrs. Brooks? Yes, baby. I'm here. Leah tried to smile. I'm sorry about your cart. Evelyn made a soft sound. That cart has survived worse than rich people's drama. Leah let out a weak breath that was almost a laugh, then closed her eyes. Annie panicked. I'm awake, Leah murmured. Just tired. Annie leaned closer. What happened in that room? Leah's fingers tightened around hers. For a long moment, she said nothing. Annie thought the doctor might come in and stop them. But Leah opened her eyes again. There was fear there, and shame, though none of the shame belonged to her. Margaret called me into Studio C before the presentation, Leah said. She had the blue folder. She said I had been confused about my role. She said assistants don't own ideas because ideas belong to the house. Annie felt heat rise in her face. She stole them. She said she refined them. She said if I made trouble, she'd tell every design house in New York I was unstable, entitled, hard to manage. Evelyn folded her arms. Same old words. Leah swallowed. I told her I had proof. The original in Mannequin 17. The cuff. Drafts on my workstation. She got angry. Not yelling. Worse than yelling. What did she do? Leah looked away. She grabbed my arm. I pulled back and hit the rack. I fell. I don't remember all of it. I remember her saying, "You should have stayed grateful." Then she left me there. Annie's stomach turned. She left you on the floor? Leah nodded once. I heard the door shut. For a few seconds, the only sound was the soft beep of the monitor. Annie wanted to run back to Valora House and scream until every glass wall cracked. Instead, she held Leah's hand and forced herself to breathe. I found you, Annie said. I know. Leah looked at her. I told you not to say anything. You were wrong. Leah blinked, then gave the smallest smile. I know. Annie wiped her cheek with her sleeve. Leah's voice became thin. I was scared she'd ruin us. She tried. And? Annie leaned closer. She didn't. A nurse entered to check Leah's for, and Annie stepped back. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She looked down. Unknown number. She answered quietly. Hello? Victor Hale's voice came through the line. Miss Carter? Are you with your sister? Yes. Is she able to speak? Annie looked at Leah. A little. Tell her this. The presentation has been canceled. Margaret Sloan has been removed from the floor. We found additional files in her office, including Leah's, and I need her permission to put her name on record as the original creator of Still Standing. Annie repeated the words slowly. Leah stared at her, as if the sentence belonged to another life. Then she closed her eyes, and this time the tears came harder. Yes, Leah whispered. Use my name. Yes, Leah whispered. Use my name. Annie repeated it into the phone, though her voice nearly broke. She said yes. On the other end, Victor was quiet for a second. Thank you. Tell her I will not announce anything publicly until she has counsel and medical clearance. But internally, her authorship is now on record. Leah heard enough to turn her face toward the phone. Mr. Hale? Annie put it on speaker and held it near her. I'm here, Miss Carter, Victor said. Leah swallowed. Please don't let this become charity. Annie looked at her sister, confused. Leah's eyes stayed half closed, but her voice steadied. I don't want a pity title. I don't want a rescue story where everyone claps because you were kind to a poor black girl after somebody else hurt her. I want the work judged because it's good. Victor did not answer quickly. Annie respected that. Quick answers were often the cheap ones. You're right, he said at last. The work will be evaluated on its own. But what happened to you will also be investigated for what it is. What is it? Leah asked. A failure, Victor said, mine included. Leah closed her eyes again, then fixed the failure, not just my name. The line went silent. Annie watched Evelyn's face. The older woman stood near the hospital curtain with both hands folded over her purse, listening like she had waited years to hear someone say that in a room where it might matter. I intend to, Victor said. After the call ended, Leah was too tired to talk. The nurse dimmed the light and told Annie she could sit for a while but not wake her if she slept. Annie took the chair beside the bed. Evelyn went to find coffee, though she said the hospital kind was an insult to the bean. Annie sat with Leah's hand in hers and tried to understand the day. That morning, she had been a girl with no badge, no appointment, and no plan beyond finding someone who would listen. Now her sister's name was inside the company record. Margaret Sloan was under investigation, and Victor Hale knew Annie's phone number. It did not feel like winning. It felt like standing after a car missed you by inches. At Valora House, Victor stood in conference room B with Daniel, Marcus, and 2 members of the board who had arrived expecting a fashion presentation and found an internal crisis instead. The white suit lay sealed in a garment evidence bag on the table. The blue folder sat beside it in a document case. Through the glass wall, the design floor remained lit, but few people pretended to work now. Board member Elaine Porter was the first to speak. She was in her 60s, with silver hair cut blunt at her jaw, and the expression of a woman who did not enjoy surprises unless she had planned them. Victor, canceling a buyer presentation without board consultation is no small decision. A woman was taken to the hospital from our storage room, Victor said. I understand that. I'm asking whether we know enough to treat this as a company-wide misconduct case. Daniel slid a preliminary report across the table. We know enough to preserve evidence and suspend involved personnel pending review. There are file alterations, access irregularities, possible retaliation, possible destruction of evidence, and multiple employee statements. The second board member, Robert Klein, frowned at the page. Possible is doing a lot of work there. Marcus turned the laptop so they could see the access logs. The metadata is not possible. It's recorded. Drafts created under junior employees were later renamed under senior accounts. In Miss Carter's case, the author field changed after access from Miss Sloan's office. There was also an attempted deletion after legal hold. Elaine looked at Victor. And Margaret? In conference room D with security outside. She has counsel on the way. Robert leaned back. She'll fight. I expect her to. She has relationships with buyers, editors, half the board. Victor's face did not move. Then half the board should be careful what they defend. Daniel looked down as if hiding a reaction. Robert's eyes narrowed. That sounded like a threat. No, Victor said. It was advice. The door opened before Robert could answer. Claire Bennett entered with an HR representative and a woman from outside counsel on speakerphone. Claire looked smaller than she had in Margaret's office, but she held a written statement in both hands. Daniel stood. Miss Bennett, you don't have to do this in front of the board. Claire glanced at Victor. I want to say it once before I lose the nerve. Victor nodded. Go ahead. Claire read quickly at first, then slower as her voice caught up with her words. Margaret had told her to run cleanups. Margaret had ordered files removed when authorship questions came up. Margaret had used assistants' logins and shared passwords. Margaret had warned junior staff that reputation traveled faster than talent. At the end, Claire lowered the paper. She said people like Leah should be grateful to be near the room, Claire said. She said some girls confuse proximity with belonging. The sentence landed heavily. Victor thought of Annie in the lobby, begging in front of people who had already decided she did not belong there. Elaine's expression changed. Did anyone report this before today? Claire looked at her. People tried. To whom? HR department managers, sometimes legal. Her eyes shifted toward Daniel, then away. They were told it was creative conflict. Daniel went still. Victor looked at him. Did you know? Daniel's face had lost color. I knew there were complaints. Not like this. What did you do? Daniel took off his glasses, then put them back on without cleaning them. I routed them through standard channels. Which led where? Daniel did not answer. Victor did it for him. Back to Margaret. The room went quiet. At the hospital, Leah woke near midnight to find Annie still beside her. Evelyn had fallen asleep in the corner chair with her purse hugged against her stomach. Annie, Leah whispered, I'm here. You should go home. So should you. Leah gave a weak smile. Fair. Annie leaned forward. Did you mean what you said? About not wanting charity? Yes. Even if they offer money? Leah turned her head toward the ceiling. The monitor beeped softly beside her. I want what I'm owed. Credit. Pay. Protection. And not just for me. Annie nodded. 17 folders. Leah looked at her. What? Marcus found at least 17. Other people. Mia, Denise, Tomas, more. Leah closed her eyes. I knew there were others. I didn't know how many. Why didn't anyone tell? Leah was quiet for so long Annie thought she had drifted off again. Because being talented doesn't make rent wait, Leah said. Because if you're black, or brown, or poor, or too young, or too old, they call your anger attitude before they call it evidence. Because everybody tells you to be grateful for a chance, even when that chance is built on your silence. Annie wiped her cheek. I hate her. I know. Don't tell me not to. I wasn't going to. That almost made Annie laugh, but it turned into a sob. Leah lifted her hand a few inches, and Annie bent down so her sister could touch her face. You did something I couldn't do, Leah said. No, I just yelled louder. You told the truth where she could hear it. Annie pressed Leah's hand against her cheek. I was scared. Good, Leah whispered. Brave without scared is just reckless. The next morning, Victor returned to the design floor before sunrise. He had not gone home. The building looked different when it was empty. Without buyers, assistants, perfume, and performance, Valora House felt like what it was, rooms full of work. He walked past Studio C alone. Mannequin 17 stood in the corner, bare now, its secret removed. He stopped beside it and thought of Leah hiding a drawing inside the lining because she trusted a mannequin more than her own company. In his office, his late wife's silver watch sat in the top drawer where he kept it on hard days. He took it out and held it for a moment. She had founded the employee scholarship program he had let become a brochure line. She used to walk the lower floors when she was alive. She knew names. He used to tease her for it. They know when you don't see them, she had told him once. He had not understood then, or he had understood and found it easier to forget. His assistant entered quietly. Mr. Hale, Margaret Sloane's attorney is here. Also, the hospital called. Leah Carter is awake and stable. Victor put the watch on. Good. Set a meeting for 9. Board, legal, HR, IT, every department head. And the selection committee? Victor looked out the window at the city beginning to pale. They can attend if they want to see what a real collection costs. They can attend if they want to see what a real collection costs. By 9 o'clock, the largest conference room at Valora House was full. But it did not feel important in the way the company usually understood importance. There were no champagne trays, no branded folders, no soft music placed under conversation. The buyers sat in one row, confused and irritated. The board sat near the center, quiet for once. Department heads lined the walls. Junior staff stood in the back because no one had known whether to offer them seats, until Victor walked in, saw them standing, and said, "Chairs." For everyone. People moved quickly after that. Margaret Sloane sat near the far end of the table with her attorney, a compact woman in a navy suit, who had already told Daniel Cross that her client denied all wrongdoing. Margaret wore the same cream jacket from the day before, but it no longer looked clean to Annie. It looked like a costume that had failed. Annie sat beside Leah, who had insisted on coming despite Dr. Monroe's warning that she should rest. The hospital had released her with instructions, fluids, and a paper bracelet still around her wrist. She moved slowly, one hand against her side, but when Annie tried to help her into the chair, Leah whispered, "Don't make me look breakable." So Annie let her sit by herself, then placed a hand on the back of her chair where only Leah could feel it. Evelyn sat on Leah's other side. She had come in her work uniform, not because she had to work, but because she said people should understand exactly who they had been stepping over. Victor stood at the front of the room. He wore his late wife's silver watch. Annie noticed because he touched it once before speaking. "Yesterday," he said, "a Valora House employee was found injured in a storage room. Her name is Leah Carter. She is here today by choice. I want that understood before anyone speaks about her as if she is a rumor, a risk, or a problem to manage." Leah looked down at the table, but Annie saw her breathing change. Victor continued. "What began as a medical emergency revealed evidence of creative theft, intimidation, record alteration, misuse of credentials, and attempted destruction of files. This investigation is ongoing, but one matter is clear enough to correct now." Margaret's attorney lifted a hand. "Mr. Hale, my client objects to any characterization of unproven allegations." Victor looked at Daniel. "Noted?" Daniel nodded. "Noted." Victor turned back to the room. The collection scheduled yesterday under the title Quiet Fire will not be presented under that name. Its original title, supported by dated sketches, hidden garment markings, file history, and witness statements, is still standing. Its creator is Leah Carter. A sound moved through the room. Not applause. Not yet. It was the sound of people adjusting to a truth that had been kept too low for too long. Leah's fingers found Annie's under the table. Margaret gave a small, controlled laugh. This is reckless. Victor did not look at her. Bring in the first piece. Caleb Ortiz and Mia Alvarez wheeled in the white suit on a dress form. It had been steamed now, but not styled for spectacle. No dramatic lighting. No music. Just the garment standing in the center of the room, sharp and quiet. Victor looked at Leah. Would you like to speak about it? Leah's hand tightened around Annie's. I'm not sure I can stand. Then don't. Leah stayed seated. For a moment, her eyes remained on the suit. When she spoke, her voice was weak. But nobody leaned away from it. I started with the shoulder, she said. I wanted a woman to look like she had the right to enter a room without asking permission. But I didn't want armor. I didn't want cruelty. I wanted dignity. A buyer in the front row, a gray-haired woman with red glasses, leaned forward. Leah continued, the cuff has my initials inside because I didn't think I would be allowed to sign my work anywhere else. That sentence changed the air. Mia turned the cuff outward. Caleb held it steady while Daniel projected a close photograph onto the screen. L, C in pale thread. A man from the board shifted in his seat. Leah looked at him, then at the others. That wasn't decoration. It was proof. Margaret's attorney spoke again. Miss Carter, were you instructed by anyone to place those initials? Leah looked at her. No. Could that not be considered unauthorized alteration of company sample property? Annie felt anger rush up, but Leah answered before she could move. When a company won't let you keep your name, you find small places to hide it. No one in the room could mistake that for confusion. Victor nodded to Marcus. Show the file history. Marcus connected his laptop. The screen filled with timestamps, author fields, access logs, and revision records. He did not dramatize it. He explained plainly that Leah's workstation created the first digital draft, that Margaret's office accessed it the next morning, that the author field changed afterward, and that the same pattern appeared across multiple employees' files. Denise Powell stood when her name appeared. That pattern block was mine. Tomas Vega raised his hand. That sleeve structure too. Harriet Kim said, the color story was taken from my board after review. Each voice added weight, not a crowd shouting, a record forming. Margaret sat without moving, but Annie could see the pulse at her throat. Then Robert Klein, the board member who had questioned Victor the night before, spoke. Victor, even if there were credit issues, fashion houses depend on collaboration. We must avoid turning every contribution into a separate ownership claim. Evelyn looked at him. Sir, may I say something? Robert blinked, surprised to be addressed by the custodian. I suppose. Victor said, Mrs. Brooks has the floor. Evelyn stood slowly. I don't know your contracts. I don't know your fancy words. But I know the difference between a table where everybody eats and a table where one person scrapes everybody's plate into her own bag. Don't call that collaboration. It insults the people who do real work. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then the buyer in red glasses began to clap once. Firm and slow. Another buyer joined. Then Mia. Then Denise. The applause spread unevenly. Unsure at first, then stronger. Leah closed her eyes. Annie felt her sister's hand tremble. Margaret's attorney leaned toward her client and whispered. Margaret did not whisper back. She stared at Evelyn, as if the older woman had committed the one offense Margaret could not forgive. She had made simple truth more powerful than polished lies. Victor raised one hand, and the room quieted. The company will open an independent investigation covering the last 5 years of creative submissions, employee complaints, authorship changes, and retaliation claims. Employees may speak to outside counsel directly. HR will not filter statements through department heads. Any employee found to have stolen work, altered records, or punished staff for reporting misconduct will be terminated and referred where appropriate. Daniel glanced at him, but did not interrupt. Victor looked at Margaret. Effective immediately, Margaret Sloan is suspended pending investigation. Margaret stood. You will regret humiliating me in front of this room. Leah spoke before Victor could answer. No, she said. Margaret turned. Leah looked tired, pale, and smaller than everyone who had tried to use that against her, but her voice held. "You humiliated yourself when you left me on that floor." The room went silent. Margaret's face changed, and for the first time Annie saw fear there without disguise. Victor looked at Daniel. "Add that statement to the record. And request the security footage from the hallway, outside Studio C." Marcus was already typing. "Pulling it now." Margaret's attorney touched her arm. "Do not respond." Margaret did anyway, because control was a habit she could not drop in time. "There is no footage inside the storage room," she said. Victor turned toward her. Nobody had mentioned the storage room. Annie felt Leah's hand go still. Marcus looked up from the laptop. "No, there isn't, but there is footage of the hallway." The screen changed. Grainy security video showed Studio C's corridor from the day before. Leah entered the storage room. Minutes later, Margaret entered behind her carrying the blue folder. Nearly 20 minutes passed. Then Margaret walked out alone. She did not call medical. She did not look for help. She closed the door and adjusted her jacket before walking away. The video stopped. No one clapped now. Victor's voice was quiet. Meeting adjourned for everyone except board, legal, security, and Miss Sloane's counsel. Leah tried to stand, but her knees weakened. Annie caught her. This time, Leah did not pull away. Outside the conference room, employees stepped aside for them, not with pity, but with respect. Mia whispered, "Thank you." Denise touched Leah's shoulder gently. Tomas nodded once, the kind of nod people give when words are too small. At the elevator, Leah leaned against Annie. "Still standing," Annie said softly. Leah gave a tired breath. "Not alone this time," she said. "Not alone this time," Leah said. Annie held her tighter as the elevator doors opened. The ride down was quiet, but not empty. Leah leaned against Annie's shoulder, one hand pressed lightly to her side, breathing through the pain she did not want anyone to see. Evelyn stood in front of them like a shield in a navy work shirt, her purse hanging from one arm, her eyes fixed on the elevator doors as if daring anyone to step in and ask Leah for one more piece of strength. When they reached the service entrance, Victor's driver was already waiting. Leah stopped when she saw the car. "I'm not going home in his car like some kind of witness he owns," she said. Annie looked at her. "You can barely stand." "I can stand enough to choose." Evelyn nodded once. "Then choose the car because it gets you home faster, not because he sent it." Leah considered that, then gave in with a small breath. "Fine. But only because my body is being dramatic." Annie helped her into the back seat. Evelyn climbed in after them. As the car pulled away from Valora House, Leah kept her face turned toward the window. The building rose behind them, clean and bright, hiding the kind of mess that did not show from the street. Annie watched her sister's reflection in the glass. "Are you okay?" Leah's mouth moved like she almost laughed. No, it was the most honest thing either of them had said all morning. Their apartment in Queens looked smaller after Valora House and the hospital, but to Annie it felt real in a way those places did not. The kitchen table still had a stack of bills under a chipped mug. Leah's sewing machine sat near the window, covered with a cloth. A red coat hung over the back of a chair, their mother's old church coat, its cuff still worn thin. Leah stopped when she saw it. Annie followed her gaze. "You want me to move it?" "No," Leah said. "Leave it." Evelyn made tea without asking, moving through the kitchen like she had been there for years. Leah eased onto the couch and closed her eyes. Annie wanted to ask 100 questions. What happens now? Will they fire Margaret? Will you go back? Do you still want the collection? Do you hate the place? But Leah looked like every answer cost blood. So Annie sat on the floor beside the couch and let the quiet work. Across the city, Victor Hale remained inside the boardroom long after Leah left. The buyers were gone. Most employees had returned to their departments, though nobody was pretending it was a normal workday anymore. Margaret Sloane sat with her attorney, no longer smiling. Daniel Cross had 3 folders open in front of him. Marcus Reed's laptop was connected to the screen, showing file trees that went back years. Elaine Porter took off her glasses. "Victor, the hallway footage is damaging, but termination should wait until outside counsel reviews the full record." Victor looked at Margaret. She left an injured employee on the floor. Margaret's attorney spoke before her client could. "The footage does not show what occurred inside the room. My client maintains she believed Miss Carter was upset, not medically endangered." Marcus glanced up. She was on the floor for at least 11 minutes before Miss Sloane exited. She did not call anyone. Margaret's attorney held her tone. Again, there is no interior footage. Victor turned to Margaret. Then explain it. Margaret sat back. Leah was emotional. She accused me of stealing work. She stumbled. I told her to stay where she was while I got help. You did not get help. I was interrupted before I could. Daniel looked at the timeline. You went to the lobby presentation area. I went to protect the event from a disruption. Victor's voice stayed calm. A woman was on the floor. A woman who was trying to destroy a season because she confused assistance with authorship. Elaine's face tightened. Robert looked away. Victor touched the silver watch at his wrist. You still don't understand what room you're in. Margaret leaned forward. The mask was gone now, and what remained was not panic. It was resentment. I understand perfectly. You need someone to blame because you haven't managed your own company in years. You want to stand here in your dead wife's watch and pretend you suddenly see the workers. Where were you when those assistants were sleeping under cutting tables? Where were you when budgets were cut and senior staff were told to deliver miracles with children who thought a sketch made them artists? No one moved. Victor absorbed the blow without blinking, but Annie, had she been there, would have seen that it landed. Margaret continued, lower now. You built a company that worships results. I gave you results. Don't act shocked because you don't like the method. Victor's answer came quietly. That may be the first useful thing you've said. Her eyes narrowed. He looked at Daniel. Write this down. The investigation includes executive oversight, board reporting, HR routing, workload abuse, unpaid creative labor, and authorship practices across all departments. Not just Margaret. Robert straightened. Victor, be careful. I am being careful. That's why I'm not letting us bury this under one convenient villain. Margaret's mouth curved. How noble. Victor looked at security. Escort Miss Sloane out of the building. Her suspension is effective now. Legal will communicate through counsel. Margaret stood. For a moment, she seemed ready to speak again. But her attorney touched her sleeve. The room watched her walk out, her heels sharp against the floor. At the doorway, she paused and looked back at Victor. She'll disappoint you, Margaret said. Girls like Leah always do when they realize talent isn't enough. Victor did not answer. After she was gone, the room felt less dangerous but no cleaner. Daniel closed one folder. She's not wrong about one thing. This goes beyond her. I know. Elaine studied Victor. Do you? Victor looked through the glass wall toward the design floor. I'm beginning to. In Queens, Annie woke from a shallow sleep to the sound of Leah crying. Not loudly. Leah never cried loudly. She had learned to fold pain into small sounds that would not worry anyone unless they were already listening. Annie sat up from the floor. Leah? I'm sorry, Leah said. For what? Leah covered her face with one hand. For making you live like this. For making you wait in lobbies. For telling you to stay quiet. For thinking if I just kept my head down, I could turn my work into a way out. Annie climbed onto the edge of the couch. You didn't make me live like this. I raised you into fear. No, you raised me. Leah shook her head. I wanted you to have a different life. I do, because of you. Evelyn had fallen asleep in the chair near the kitchen, but her eyes opened. She did not interrupt. She only watched, letting the sisters find the words people usually postpone until funerals. Leah wiped her face. When Margaret took the folder, I thought maybe I was stupid. Maybe I had misunderstood my place. She said I should be grateful my ideas were even near the collection. And for a second, Annie, I believed her. Annie's voice softened. I didn't. Leah looked at her. I saw you draw them. I saw you name them. I saw you hide your initials because you already knew they'd try to erase you. I never believed her. Leah closed her eyes, and the tears came again, but this time she did not apologize for them. The phone rang near the kitchen table. Annie reached it before the second ring. Hello? Miss Carter. This is Daniel Cross from Valora House Legal. Is Leah Carter available to speak? Annie looked at Leah. Leah nodded. Annie put the phone on speaker. Daniel's voice was careful. Miss Carter, I'm calling to inform you that Margaret Sloane has been suspended and removed from the building. Outside counsel will contact you regarding your rights, representation, compensation, and participation in the investigation. Mr. Hale has also directed that you be placed on paid medical leave immediately. Leah stared at the phone. Paid? Yes. For how long? Until your doctor clears you, at minimum. Further arrangements will be discussed with your counsel. Leah swallowed. And the collection? Daniel paused. Still, standing as frozen. Until you decide, with counsel, how you want to proceed. Leah looked at Annie, then at the red coat on the chair. My name stays on it, she said. Yes, Daniel answered. Your name stays on it. After the call ended, Leah was quiet for a long time. Then she pushed herself up, too fast. And Annie reached for her. What are you doing? Leah nodded toward the sewing machine. I need my sketchbook. You need rest. I need both. Annie brought the sketchbook from under the machine. Its cover was bent, the corners soft from use. Leah opened it to a blank page, picked up a pencil, and held it as if checking whether her hand still belonged to her. At first, she only drew a line. It shook. She drew another beside it, steadier. Annie watched from the floor. What is it? She asked. Leah looked at the red coat, then at her sister, then back at the page. The last look, she said. The one Margaret never saw. It's the door, Leah said. For 3 days, the word stayed with Annie. Door. Not ending. Not grand finale. Not the last beautiful thing before everyone went home and forgot who had bled for it. A door meant somebody had to walk through, and walking through meant risk. Leah spent those days at the kitchen table with Patrice Bell on speaker, Marcus sending file reports, and Annie keeping a notebook of every name that appeared in the audit. Mia Alvarez, Denise Powell, Tomas Vega, Harriet Kim, Jordan Ellis, Priya Nair, Caleb Ortiz. Some had proof. Some had only memory. Some had proof they had been too afraid to keep. Leah insisted every person be called, not grouped, not reduced to a category. Names first, she said when Daniel tried to summarize them as affected contributors. On the phone, Daniel corrected himself. Names first. Annie wrote that down too. Valora House did not move easily. It had polished floors, expensive lawyers, and years of habit inside its walls. Every correction had to be argued into shape. The company wanted to say mistakes were made. Patrice crossed that out. The company wanted to say creative overlap occurred. Leah crossed that out herself. Say stolen, Leah said. Daniel went quiet. That word has legal consequences. So does stealing. Patrice smiled from the other side of the kitchen table. We'll use legally precise language. But Miss Carter is not wrong. Victor did not join every call. When he did, he mostly listened. Annie had expected a billionaire to fill rooms with his voice. Instead, he became more dangerous when he was quiet. People who had learned to perform for him did not know what to do when performance was no longer rewarded. On Thursday morning, he came to Queens with Elaine Porter and Daniel. Not in a limousine. One black car, no assistant trailing behind. Evelyn arrived 10 minutes earlier with a pound cake wrapped in foil because, as she said, power can sit down, but it doesn't get fed store cookies in my presence. Leah laughed for the first time without pain cutting through it. Their apartment was too small for the meeting, but Leah refused to move it. If we're talking about who gets to be seen, she said, they can see where I actually worked. Victor accepted coffee in a chipped mug and sat at the kitchen table. His eyes moved once to the red church coat hanging on the chair, then to the sewing machine near the window, then to the stack of bills under the ceramic bowl. He did not comment. Annie appreciated that. Poor people knew when their lives were being toured. Elaine opened a folder. We have a revised proposal. Still Standing will be restored to Leah Carter as lead designer. Each verified contributor will receive corrected credit, back pay where applicable, and a participation bonus tied to the collection's commercial use. We are also creating an independent creative review board. Leah listened without touching the papers. Who sits on it? Elaine looked at Victor, then back at Leah. 2 external industry professionals. 1 legal representative. 1 rotating junior employee representative. 1 craft representative, from pattern or sample. 1 executive. Not enough, Leah said. Elaine's brows rose. Which part? The people most likely to be stolen from need more than 1 seat they rotate through like a courtesy. Assistants, interns, sample workers, pattern makers, and custodial staff see things executives don't. Mrs. Brooks knew I was being overworked before anyone with an office did. Evelyn lifted her hands. Don't drag me into committees. I have floors to finish. Leah turned to her. That's exactly why you should be there. Evelyn looked offended for 2 seconds, then thoughtful. I'll consider telling people when they're acting foolish, if that helps. It would, Victor said. Annie hid a smile. Daniel added notes. Expanded worker representation. Anonymous reporting outside department chain. Direct legal access. And no retaliation hidden inside performance reviews, Annie said. Everyone looked at her. She felt heat rise in her face but kept going. Margaret didn't just threaten people. She made their files look bad. Then when they complained, everyone said, well, your reviews show a pattern. You need to review the reviews too. Leah's eyes softened with pride. Victor nodded. She's right. Annie looked down at her notebook before anyone could make her feel brave out loud. Elaine closed her folder slowly. This will be expensive. Leah looked at her. So was silence. You just weren't paying the bill. No one spoke for a moment. Victor set his mug down. We'll do it. Elaine turned to him. Victor, we'll do it, he repeated, and we'll publish the framework after the first stage is complete. Daniel looked up. Publicly? Yes. If we only repair this privately. We are asking injured people to trust the same walls that hid the injury. Leah studied him. That sounds good. But will you still say it when the press calls it scandal? Victor touched the silver watch on his wrist. Not for show. More like checking that something still held. I have spent years protecting the company from embarrassment. It did not make the company honorable. The room changed at that. Not healed, but less guarded. Patrice leaned forward. Then we need protection in writing for every employee participating in the audit. We need independent counsel access, credit review, wage review, and a written apology that names harm without turning Leah into a marketing tool. Victor looked at Leah. Agreed. Leah reached for the red coat sketch and turned it toward him. And this goes in the collection. Elaine leaned closer despite herself. This wasn't in the recovered folder. No, Leah said. Margaret never saw it. Victor studied the drawing. Tell me about it. Leah's fingers rested near the torn cuff she had transformed into design. My mother wore the original coat to church. After she died, people wanted to donate it because it was worn. I kept it. For years, I thought the collection ended with proof that I survived. But survival isn't the last look. Opening the door is, Elaine said. The door to what? Leah looked at Annie, at Evelyn, at the little apartment where grief, rent, sketches, and soup had shared the same table, to a room where no one has to hide their name in a cuff. Victor did not answer right away. He looked at the sketch the way Annie had seen people look at art in museums. Except this was different. This had bills under it, and pain behind it. Finally, he said, then it should close the show. Leah shook her head. No, it opens it. Elaine blinked. Open with the red coat? Yes. That changes the whole order. Good. Annie saw Victor smile, barely. By the end of the meeting, nothing was finished. But everything had moved. There would be more lawyers, more calls, more people trying to soften words until they could no longer cut. Leah knew that. Annie knew it too. But when Victor and Elaine left, the proposal on the table had red marks in Leah's handwriting, Annie's notes in the margins, and Evelyn's pound cake crumbs on the corner. That felt like a beginning. After the door closed, Leah sat back, exhausted. Annie gathered the cups. You really want the red coat first? Annie asked. Leah looked at the sketch. Yes. Why? Leah's voice was quiet. Because I'm tired of entering rooms last. That evening, Annie stood by the window while Leah slept on the couch, the sketchbook resting open beside her. Across the street, people carried groceries, argued into phones, chased children, waited for buses, ordinary lives moving under ordinary light. Annie looked back at the red coat on the chair. For the first time, it did not look like something left behind. It looked ready. The last look, Leah said, the one Margaret never saw. Annie did not ask another question. She had learned that when Leah drew, questions could wait. The pencil moved slowly at first, dragging through the blank space as if the page had weight. Then Leah's hand steadied. A line became a shoulder, the shoulder became a coat, and the coat became something Annie knew before it was finished. Their mother's red church coat, not copied. Leah never copied memory. She translated it. The collar sat higher, the waist was cleaner. The torn cuff became an intentional opening. Not damage, but design. The hem curved with a slight forward motion, like the woman wearing it had already decided where she was going. Annie sat on the floor and watched the sketch appear. "That's Mama," she said softly. Leah shook her head. "No, it's us after Mama." Evelyn, awake in the chair, leaned forward. "That's different. It has to be," Leah said. "If it's only grief, it belongs in the past. I want it to walk." Her voice was tired, but the idea inside it was not. Annie had heard that voice before, late at night near the sample shelves at Valora House, when Leah forgot how small the world wanted her to feel. For the next 2 days, Leah rested because Annie and Evelyn made it impossible for her not to. Dr. Monroe called twice. A lawyer from outside counsel called once and explained things in careful phrases. Independent representation, wage review, authorship audit, retaliation claim. Leah listened, asked questions, and wrote everything down. She did not sound like a victim on those calls. She sounded like a designer who had learned the cost of silence and wanted a receipt. Victor called on the 3rd morning. Annie was making oatmeal. Leah was at the kitchen table, sketchbook open, pencil in hand, the red coat drawing revised 4 times. Evelyn had gone back to work, though she had warned Annie over the phone not to let Leah act healed just because she was bored. Leah answered on speaker. "This is Leah, Miss Carter," Victor said. "I'll be direct. The independent review has confirmed enough that we cannot present still standing without your participation and approval. We would like to meet, not at Valora House unless you choose. Your lawyer can be present." Leah looked at Annie. Annie mouthed, "Lawyer." Leah nodded. "I'll speak with counsel first." "Good," Victor said. "There's one more thing. Several employees whose work was found in Margaret's files have asked whether you would be willing to meet with them, not as their spokesperson, just as someone who opened a door." Leah's face tightened. Annie opened it. Annie looked up from the stove. "Don't put that on me." Victor heard her. "Then both of you did." Leah stared at the sketchbook. "I don't know if I can carry everybody's pain." "I'm not asking you to," Victor said. "And if anyone does, send them to me." Leah let out a small breath. "That might be the first thing you've said that I fully like." Victor almost laughed. "Almost. Fair." The meeting happened the next afternoon in a community center near Queens Boulevard, not at Valora House. Leah chose it because the room had folding chairs, bad coffee, and no glass walls. Annie liked it immediately. Nobody could pretend a folding table was beneath them when everyone sat at one. Leah's lawyer, a calm woman named Patrice Bell, sat beside her with a yellow pad. Victor arrived with Daniel and Elaine Porter, not with cameras, not with a publicist. Marcus came too, carrying a laptop bag and looking like he had not slept enough in a week. Mia came first, then Tomas. Denise Powell arrived in a denim jacket with a grocery bag of pastries because, as she said, "If we're talking trauma, we're not doing it hungry." Harriet Kim came with color boards tucked under one arm. Others followed. Some from the list. Some not yet named in the files but tired of pretending they had nothing to say. At first, nobody knew where to look. Leah solved it by speaking plainly. "I'm not here to lead a revolution. I'm here because my work was stolen, and apparently I'm not the only one." Denise opened the pastry bag. "That's usually how revolutions start, sweetheart, with somebody being tired and underpaid." A few people laughed, and the room loosened. Victor sat near the end of the table. Not at the head. Annie noticed. So did Leah. Patrice Bell cleared her throat. "Before anyone shares details, remember this may become part of a legal process. You can speak generally today or request a private interview. No one should feel pressured." Mia raised her hand a little. "Can I just say something not legal?" Patrice nodded. "You can." Mia looked at Leah. "I'm sorry I didn't help you sooner." Leah's face softened. "Did you know?" "Not everything. But I knew she was doing something. I saw her take your folder once. I told myself maybe you gave it to her." Mia wiped her hands on her jeans. That was easier. Leah did not rush to forgive her. Annie respected that. Forgiveness given too quickly could become another way to keep everybody comfortable except the person hurt. After a moment, Leah said, "I understand why you were scared." Mia nodded, crying now. "That's more than I deserve." "No. Evelyn's voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. She had come straight from work, her uniform shirt under a brown coat, her purse on her shoulder. No, Evelyn repeated, stepping in. We're not doing that either. Shame belongs to the person who used your fear, not the person trying to survive it. Denise pointed at her. I like her. She grows on people, Annie said. Evelyn sat beside Annie. Only the smart ones. The meeting lasted almost 3 hours. Stories came out in uneven order. A sleeve taken here, a color board there, a pattern altered, a credit removed, a complaint redirected, a performance review lowered after someone asked too many questions. Marcus showed the group how to submit files safely. Patrice explained documentation. Daniel admitted the complaint process had failed and did not hide behind policy when people challenged him. You sent our complaints back to her, Tomas said. Daniel took the hit. Yes. Why? Because the system told me that was procedure. Denise leaned back. And you never wondered why the procedure always protected the same people? Daniel looked down. Not enough. Annie expected Victor to rescue him from the silence. He did not. Leah listened more than she spoke. By the end, she looked exhausted, but something in her had changed. Not healed. That was too simple. More like rebalanced. She was no longer holding the weight alone. When the room began to empty, Victor approached the table with a document folder. Patrice straightened. This is not a contract, Victor said quickly. It's a proposal for discussion. Paid medical leave, back pay review, public authorship correction, independent creative credit audit, a protected design role if Miss Carter wants to return. No non-disclosure tied to misconduct. Patrice took the folder. We'll review it. Leah looked at him. A protected design role? Yes. Under who? Victor paused. Not yet decided. Then no. Annie turned to her. Leah, no, Leah said again. Calm now. I won't go back into a room where protection is just a promise from somebody powerful. If there's a role, it needs structure. Written authority, clear credit rules, access to legal without department approval. And the others need the same, not just me because my story embarrassed the company. Patrice smiled slightly and wrote something down. Victor looked at Leah for a long moment. That is a stronger proposal than mine. It should be, Leah said. I've lived inside the problem. He accepted that with a nod. Then help design the fix. Leah looked at Annie, then at Evelyn, then at the red coat sketch lying open on the table between them. I'll help, she said, but still standing presence only when every stolen name has been reviewed. Elaine Porter, quiet until then, spoke from the end of the room. That could delay the season. Leah looked at her. Then the season can learn patience. Annie almost smiled. Victor did. Outside, evening had settled over Queens. The community center lights buzzed above the sidewalk. Employees left in small groups, talking in low voices that sounded less afraid than when they arrived. Leah stood beside Annie, tired but upright. Annie touched the edge of the sketchbook. Do you still want the last look in the collection? Leah looked down at the red coat drawing. Yes, she said, but not as the ending. What is it then? Leah watched Mia and Tomas walk toward the train together, Denise arguing cheerfully about which pastry was best, Evelyn waiting near the curb with her arms crossed like a guard. Leah closed the sketchbook. It's the door, she said. It's the door, Leah said. For 3 days. The word stayed with Annie. Door. Not ending. Not grand finale. Not the last beautiful thing before everyone went home and forgot who had bled for it. A door meant somebody had to walk through, and walking through meant risk. Leah spent those days at the kitchen table with Patrice Bell on speaker, Marcus sending file reports, and Annie keeping a notebook of every name that appeared in the audit. Mia Alvarez, Denise Powell, Tomas Vega, Harriet Kim, Jordan Ellis, Priya Nair, Caleb Ortiz. Some had proof. Some had only memory. Some had proof they had been too afraid to keep. Leah insisted every person be called. Not grouped, not reduced to a category. Names first, she said when Daniel tried to summarize them as affected contributors. On the phone, Daniel corrected himself. Names first. Annie wrote that down too. Laura had it. Patrice crossed that out. The company wanted to say, creative overlap occurred. Leah crossed that out herself. Say stolen, Leah said. Daniel went quiet. That word has legal consequences. So does stealing. Patrice smiled from the other side of the kitchen table. We'll use legally precise language. But Miss Carter is not wrong. Victor did not join every call. When he did, he mostly listened. Annie had expected a billionaire to fill rooms with his voice. Instead, he became more dangerous when he was quiet. People who had learned to perform for him did not know what to do when performance was no longer rewarded. On Thursday morning, he came to Queens with Elaine Porter and Daniel. Not in a limousine, one black car, no assistant trailing behind. Evelyn arrived 10 minutes earlier with a pound cake wrapped in foil because, as she said, power can sit down, but it doesn't get fed store cookies in my presence. Leah laughed for the first time without pain cutting through it. Their apartment was too small for the meeting, but Leah refused to move it. If we're talking about who gets to be seen, she said, they can see where I actually worked. Victor accepted coffee in a chipped mug and sat at the kitchen table. His eyes moved once to the red church coat hanging on the chair, then to the sewing machine near the window, then to the stack of bills under the ceramic bowl. He did not comment. Annie appreciated that. Poor people knew when their lives were being toured. Elaine opened a folder. We have a revised proposal. Still Standing will be restored to Leah Carter as lead designer. Each verified contributor will receive corrected credit, back pay where applicable, and a participation bonus tied to the collection's commercial use. We are also creating an independent creative review board. Leah listened without touching the papers. Who sits on it? Elaine looked at Victor, then back at Leah. 2 external industry professionals, 1 legal representative, 1 rotating junior employee representative, 1 craft representative from pattern or sample, 1 executive. Not enough, Leah said. Elaine's brows rose. Which part? The people most likely to be stolen from need more than 1 seat they rotate through like a courtesy. Assistants, interns, sample workers, pattern makers, and custodial staff see things executives don't. Mrs. Brooks knew I was being overworked before anyone with an office did. Evelyn lifted her hands. Don't drag me into committees. I have floors to finish. Leah turned to her. That's exactly why you should be there. Evelyn looked offended for 2 seconds, then thoughtful. I'll consider telling people when they're acting foolish, if that helps. It would, Victor said. Annie hid a smile. Daniel added notes. Expanded worker representation. Anonymous reporting outside department chain. Direct legal access. And no retaliation hidden inside performance reviews, Annie said. Everyone looked at her. She felt heat rise in her face but kept going. Margaret didn't just threaten people. She made their files look bad. Then when they complained, everyone said, well, your reviews show a pattern. You need to review the reviews too. Leah's eyes softened with pride. Victor nodded. She's right. Annie looked down at her notebook before anyone could make her feel brave out loud. Elaine closed her folder slowly. This will be expensive. Leah looked at her. So was silence. You just weren't paying the bill. No one spoke for a moment. Victor set his mug down. We'll do it. Elaine turned to him. Victor, we'll do it, he repeated, and we'll publish the framework after the first stage is complete. Daniel looked up. Publicly? Yes. If we only repair this privately, we are asking injured people to trust the same walls that hid the injury. Leah studied him. That sounds good, but will you still say it when the press calls it scandal? Victor touched the silver watch on his wrist. Not for show, more like checking that something still held. I have spent years protecting the company from embarrassment. It did not make the company honorable. The room changed at that. Not healed, but less guarded. Patrice leaned forward. Then we need protection in writing for every employee participating in the audit. We need independent counsel access, credit review, wage review, and a written apology that names harm without turning Leah into a marketing tool. Victor looked at Leah. Agreed. Leah reached for the red coat sketch and turned it toward him. And this goes in the collection. Elaine leaned closer despite herself. This wasn't in the recovered folder. No, Leah said. Margaret never saw it. Victor studied the drawing. Tell me about it. Leah's fingers rested near the torn cuff she had transformed into design. My mother wore the original coat to church. After she died, people wanted to donate it because it was worn. I kept it. For years, I thought the collection ended with proof that I survived. But survival isn't the last look. Opening the door is, Elaine said. The door to what? Leah looked at Annie, at Evelyn, at the little apartment where grief, rent, sketches, and soup had shared the same table, to a room where no one has to hide their name in a cuff. Victor did not answer right away. He looked at the sketch, the way Annie had seen people look at art in museums, except this was different. This had bills under it and pain behind it. Finally, he said, "Then it should close the show." Leah shook her head. "No, it opens it." Elaine blinked. "Open with the red coat?" "Yes. That changes the whole order." "Good." Annie saw Victor smile, barely. By the end of the meeting, nothing was finished. But everything had moved. There would be more lawyers, more calls, more people trying to soften words until they could no longer cut. Leah knew that. Annie knew it too. But when Victor and Elaine left, the proposal on the table had red marks in Leah's handwriting, Annie's notes in the margins, and Evelyn's pound cake crumbs on the corner. That felt like a beginning. After the door closed, Leah sat back, exhausted. Annie gathered the cups. "You really want the red coat first?" Annie asked. Leah looked at the sketch. "Yes." "Why?" Leah's voice was quiet. "Because I'm tired of entering rooms last." That evening, Annie stood by the window while Leah slept on the couch, the sketchbook resting open beside her. Across the street, people carried groceries, argued into phones, chased children, waited for buses, ordinary lives moving under ordinary light. Annie looked back at the red coat on the chair. For the first time, it did not look like something left behind. It looked ready. "It's the door," Leah said. For 3 days, the word stayed with Annie. Door. Not ending, not grand finale, not the last beautiful thing before everyone went home and forgot who had bled for it. A door meant somebody had to walk through, and walking through meant risk. Leah spent those days at the kitchen table with Patrice Bell on speaker, Marcus sending file reports, and Annie keeping a notebook of every name that appeared in the audit. Mia Alvarez, Denise Powell, Tomas Vega, Harriet Kim, Jordan Ellis, Priya Nair, Caleb Ortiz. Some had proof, some had only memory. Some had proof they had been too afraid to keep. Leah insisted every person be called, not grouped, not reduced to a category. "Names first," she said when Daniel tried to summarize them as affected contributors. On the phone, Daniel corrected himself. "Names first." Annie wrote that down too. Valora House did not move easily. It had polished floors, expensive lawyers, and years of habit inside its walls. Every correction had to be argued into shape. The company wanted to say mistakes were made. Patrice crossed that out. The company wanted to say creative overlap occurred. Leah crossed that out herself. "Say stolen," Leah said. Daniel went quiet. "That word has legal consequences. So does stealing." Patrice smiled from the other side of the kitchen table. "We'll use legally precise language, but Miss Carter is not wrong." Victor did not join every call. When he did, he mostly listened. Annie had expected a billionaire to fill rooms with his voice. Instead, he became more dangerous when he was quiet. People who had learned to perform for him did not know what to do when performance was no longer rewarded. On Thursday morning, he came to Queens with Elaine Porter and Daniel. Not in a limousine. One black car, no assistant trailing behind. Evelyn arrived 10 minutes earlier with a pound cake wrapped in foil because, as she said, "Power can sit down, but it doesn't get fed store cookies in my presence." Leah laughed for the first time without pain cutting through it. Their apartment was too small for the meeting, but Leah refused to move it. "If we're talking about who gets to be seen," she said, "they can see where I actually worked." Victor accepted coffee in a chipped mug and sat at the kitchen table. His eyes moved once to the red church coat hanging on the chair, then to the sewing machine near the window, then to the stack of bills under the ceramic bowl. He did not comment. Annie appreciated that. Poor people knew when their lives were being toured. Elaine opened a folder. "We have a revised proposal. Still Standing will be restored to Leah Carter as lead designer. Each verified contributor will receive corrected credit, back pay where applicable, and a participation bonus tied to the collection's commercial use. We are also creating an independent creative review board." Leah listened without touching the papers. "Who sits on it?" Elaine looked at Victor, then back at Leah. "2 external industry professionals. 1 legal representative. 1 rotating junior employee representative. 1 craft representative, from pattern or sample. 1 executive." "Not enough," Leah said. Elaine's brows rose. "Which part?" The people most likely to be stolen from need more than one seat they rotate through like a courtesy. Assistants, interns, sample workers, pattern makers, and custodial staff see things executives don't. Mrs. Brooks knew I was being overworked before anyone with an office did. Evelyn lifted her hands. Don't drag me into committees. I have floors to finish. Leah turned to her. That's exactly why you should be there. Evelyn looked offended for 2 seconds, then thoughtful. I'll consider telling people when they're acting foolish, if that helps. It would, Victor said. Annie hid a smile. Daniel added notes. Expanded worker representation. Anonymous reporting outside department chain. Direct legal access. And no retaliation hidden inside performance reviews, Annie said. Everyone looked at her. She felt heat rise in her face but kept going. Margaret didn't just threaten people. She made their files look bad. Then when they complained, everyone said, well, your reviews show a pattern. You need to review the reviews too. Leah's eyes softened with pride. Victor nodded. She's right. Annie looked down at her notebook before anyone could make her feel brave out loud. Elaine closed her folder slowly. This will be expensive. Leah looked at her. So was silence. You just weren't paying the bill. No one spoke for a moment. Victor set his mug down. We'll do it. Elaine turned to him. Victor, we'll do it, he repeated, and we'll publish the framework after the first stage is complete. Daniel looked up. Publicly? Yes. If we only repair this privately, we are asking injured people to trust the same walls that hid the injury. Leah studied him. That sounds good, but will you still say it when the press calls it scandal? Victor touched the silver watch on his wrist. Not for show, more like checking that something still held. I have spent years protecting the company from embarrassment. It did not make the company honorable. The room changed at that, not healed, but less guarded. Patrice leaned forward. Then we need protection in writing for every employee participating in the audit. We need independent counsel access, credit review, wage review, and a written apology that names harm without turning Leah into a marketing tool. Victor looked at Leah. Agreed. Leah reached for the red coat sketch and turned it toward him. And this goes in the collection. Elaine leaned closer despite herself. This wasn't in the recovered folder. No, Leah said. Margaret never saw it. Victor studied the drawing. Tell me about it. Leah's fingers rested near the torn cuff she had transformed into design. My mother wore the original coat to church. After she died, people wanted to donate it because it was worn. I kept it. For years, I thought the collection ended with proof that I survived. But survival isn't the last look. Opening the door is. Elaine said, the door to what? Leah looked at Annie, at Evelyn, at the little apartment where grief, rent, sketches, and soup had shared the same table. To a room where no one has to hide their name in a cuff. Victor did not answer right away. He looked at the sketch the way Annie had seen people look at art in museums. Except this was different. This had bills under it, and pain behind it. Finally, he said, then it should close the show. Leah shook her head. No, it opens it. Elaine blinked. Open with the red coat? Yes. That changes the whole order. Good. Annie saw Victor smile, barely. By the end of the meeting, nothing was finished, but everything had moved. There would be more lawyers, more calls, more people trying to soften words until they could no longer cut. Leah knew that. Annie knew it too. But when Victor and Elaine left, the proposal on the table had red marks in Leah's handwriting, Annie's notes in the margins, and Evelyn's pound cake crumbs on the corner. That felt like a beginning. After the door closed, Leah sat back, exhausted. Annie gathered the cups. You really want the red coat first? Annie asked. Leah looked at the sketch. Yes. Why? Leah's voice was quiet. Because I'm tired of entering rooms last. That evening, Annie stood by the window while Leah slept on the couch, the sketchbook resting open beside her. Across the street, people carried groceries, argued into phones, chased children, waited for buses. Ordinary lives moving under ordinary light. Annie looked back at the red coat on the chair. For the first time, it did not look like something left behind. It looked ready. It looked ready. By the following Monday, still standing had become a problem too large for Valora House to hide, and too important for Leah to rush. The company wanted a statement by noon. Patrice wanted another revision. Elaine wanted the board to approve every comma. Victor wanted the words to be plain enough that nobody could use them as wallpaper. Leah read the draft at the kitchen table while Annie packed her school bag across from her. The first line said, Velora House acknowledges concerns regarding creative credit within its design department. Leah picked up a red pen and crossed out concerns. Annie looked over. What are you putting? Failures. That'll make them nervous. Good. The next sentence said the company would review internal processes. Leah crossed out processes and wrote people. By the time Victor called, the page looked wounded. Miss Carter, he said, I take it you have notes. I have corrections. Annie smiled into her cereal. Victor said, send them. Leah leaned back. Mr. Hale, before you release anything, I want one thing clear. I don't want my face used as proof the company suddenly became good. No campaign, Victor said. No photographs without approval. No interviews unless you choose. And the others? Same protections. Leah looked at Annie, who gave one firm nod. Then we're closer, Leah said. That afternoon the statement went out. It was not perfect. Nothing written by lawyers ever seemed fully alive. But it said Leah Carter's name. It said still standing. It said independent investigation. It said creative theft, retaliation, and failure of oversight. It said Margaret Sloan was suspended pending investigation. It said Velora House would review past credits and compensate harmed workers where findings supported it. By 5 o'clock, the story had reached fashion blogs. By 6, 2 major newspapers called. By 7, a television producer left Annie a voicemail that began, Your family's inspiring journey. Annie deleted it before Leah heard the rest. Leah sat on the couch, quiet. You okay? Annie asked. I hate that everybody can see it now. You wanted them to. I wanted the truth seen, not my pain. Annie sat beside her. Can you separate them? Leah looked at the red coat sketch on the table. I'm trying. The next morning, Velora House received more calls than it could answer. Some buyers withdrew from the season, saying they wanted distance until the investigation ended. Others asked whether Still Standing would still be presented. One editor wrote that the collection might become the most culturally significant American fashion statement of the year, which made Leah shut the laptop. They haven't even seen it, she said. They're writing about the scandal, not the work. Patrice, on speaker, answered. Then we control what access they get. I don't want to control it. I want it honest. Honesty needs structure too, Patrice said. Otherwise people turn it into whatever sells. At Velora House, Victor faced his own storm. The board called an emergency meeting. Robert Klein wanted the statement softened. 2 members worried shareholders would panic. Elaine, who had once worried about the season delay, now sat beside Victor with a printed copy of Leah's edits in front of her. Robert tapped the page. You admitted too much. Victor looked at him. We admitted what we can support. You used the phrase failure of oversight. Yes, that implicates leadership. It should. Robert's mouth tightened. There are ways to repair without setting the building on fire. Victor glanced toward the windows overlooking Manhattan. The building was already burning. We were complimenting the lighting. Elaine hid a smile behind her hand. The meeting lasted 2 hours. When it ended, Robert left angry. 3 board members left nervous. And Victor stayed behind with Elaine. You understand, she said. Some people will come for your seat. I know. And Margaret will not go quietly. I know that too. Elaine studied him. Is Leah Carter worth all of this? Victor turned. That's the wrong question. What's the right one? How many Leah Carters did we spend years deciding were not worth it? Elaine had no quick answer. 2 days later, Margaret gave her answer through an attorney's letter and a private whisper to the press. She denied everything. She claimed Leah had been unstable, ambitious, and manipulated by outsiders. She claimed Annie had staged a confrontation for money. She claimed Victor Hale was sacrificing a loyal executive to protect his own reputation. The article appeared online at 8:14 inches the morning. Annie read it on her phone before Leah woke. Her hands went cold. The headline did not mention the white suit. Accusé, not designer, not injured employee, not Leah Carter. Accusé. Annie wanted to throw the phone across the room. Leah came into the kitchen wearing an old sweatshirt and saw Annie's face. What happened? Nothing. Annie. Annie handed her the phone. Leah read without sitting down. Her expression did not change at first. Then something in her eyes went distant, as if Margaret had reached through the screen and put her back on the storage room floor. She's doing it again, Annie said. She's making you sound like you wanted attention. Leah set the phone on the table carefully, too carefully. I knew she would. That doesn't make it okay. No. What are we going to do? Leah looked at the red coat on the chair. Then she picked up her phone and called Patrice. I want to make a statement, Leah said. Patrice's voice sharpened. Slow down. We need to discuss risk. I'm done letting other people describe me. That I understand. But speak with purpose, not pain. Leah closed her eyes. Then help me make pain useful. By noon, Leah, Annie, Evelyn, Patrice, and Victor met at the community center again. Not Valora House, Leah insisted. If she went, Victor arrived with Marcus and Daniel. Marcus had a file of verified evidence. Daniel had a statement timeline. Patrice had Leah's draft, which began with one sentence. My name is Leah Carter, and I designed Still Standing. Patrice read it aloud and nodded. Good. Start with identity, not injury. Leah added the second line herself. I did not ask to become a symbol. I asked to keep my name on my work. Evelyn sat back. That one stays. Annie watched her sister write. The room was quiet except for the scrape of pen on paper and Marcus's keyboard, as he prepared evidence links for reporters who would receive them after the statement. Leah did not cry. She did not shake. She revised like she designed, cutting anything that did not hold weight. When the statement was ready, Patrice recorded Leah on a simple camera. No makeup team, no dramatic background. Leah sat at the folding table in her own sweater, the red coat sketch beside her. She looked into the lens. My name is Leah Carter, and I designed Still Standing. I did not ask to become a symbol. I asked to keep my name on my work. What happened to me is not only about one collection or one executive. It is about what happens when talented workers are told to be grateful for being used, then punished when they ask to be seen. I will not discuss my medical condition for public entertainment. I will not let anyone turn my sister's courage into a lie about greed. The evidence is being reviewed. The people harmed deserve credit, pay, and protection. The work deserves truth. She paused, and Annie thought she was done. Then Leah looked down at the red coat sketch and back up again. Still, standing was never about being unbreakable. It was about what remains after people try to erase you. I remain. So do the others. Patrice stopped recording. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Evelyn wiped one eye with the heel of her hand. Well, that'll do. The video was posted at 3. By evening, the article about Margaret had been buried under responses from employees, designers, editors, and ordinary women who had no connection to fashion but knew exactly what it meant to do work someone else claimed. Mia posted her name. Denise posted hers. Tomas, Harriet, Priya, Jordan. One after another, the quiet became public. At 9:37 p.m., Victor sent Leah a message. No pressure to answer tonight. The board has approved the revised credit audit. Margaret's counsel requested settlement discussions. Your statement changed the room. Leah read it twice, then handed the phone to Annie. Annie smiled. You changed the room. Leah shook her head and looked at the growing list of names on Annie's notebook. No, she said. We opened the door. No, Leah said. We opened the door. The door did not stay open by itself. That was what Annie learned in the weeks that followed. Truth could break a lock, but keeping the room open took work. It took lawyers reading old contracts line by line. It took Marcus pulling records from systems nobody had checked in years. It took employees finding courage in pieces, one document, one email, one witness statement at a time. It took Leah waking some mornings too tired to speak, and still answering when Patrice called because another name had been found in Margaret's files. Valora House changed slowly, and not everyone wanted it changed. Some executives avoided Leah's name in meetings. Some editors praised her in public but privately asked whether the scandal made the clothes more marketable. A few buyers returned only after Victor made it clear. Still Standing would not be sold as a tragedy. Collection. It is not a tragedy collection, Leah said during one tense call. A buyer answered, Of course. I only meant the story gives it emotional depth. Leah looked at Annie across the kitchen table and muted the phone. If one more person calls theft depth, I'm going to scream. Annie said, Please do it on speaker. Leah almost smiled, then unmuted. The clothes have depth because of the design. The story explains why the credit matters. Those are not the same thing. There was a pause on the line. Victor's voice came next. Miss Carter is correct. After that, the buyer chose different words. The show was rescheduled for late spring, not in the grand presentation hall where Margaret had planned to claim it, but on the main floor of Velora House after the lobby was cleared of its usual velvet ropes. Leah wanted the audience to enter through the same doors where Annie had begged for help. Victor questioned it once. That lobby carries a painful memory. Leah looked at Annie. Only if it stays the same. So they changed it. The marble floor was not covered. Leah refused anything that hid the place. Instead, a simple runway was built through the center of the lobby, low enough that the models did not tower over the audience. Chairs were arranged on both sides, but the first row was not reserved for buyers or board members. Leah placed employees there. Assistants, pattern makers, sample workers, custodians, interns, security guards, people whose badges had opened service doors but rarely front ones. When Elaine saw the seating chart, she sighed. Some buyers will complain. Leah said, they can stand. Evelyn, who had been appointed to the new Worker Review Council despite complaining about committee foolishness, tapped the chart with one finger. Put the older pattern ladies near the aisle. Their knees aren't for squeezing past rich people. Leah made the change. Annie became Leah's shadow during fittings, not because Leah needed guarding every second, but because Annie knew how to remember. She remembered which model moved carefully in the black dress because the hem pulled at the left knee. She remembered that Mia's jacket needed her name on the internal credit sheet. She remembered Denise's pattern correction on the third look, Tomas's sleeve structure, Harriet's color revisions, Caleb's sample notes. Every name went into the show record before any garment touched the runway. One afternoon, Leah found Annie at the end of a work table, checking a list with a pencil behind her ear. You know you don't work here, Leah said. Annie did not look up. Neither did half the people who built this collection, apparently. Leah leaned against the table. She was stronger now, but still not fully recovered. Pain had a way of leaving slowly, when it had been ignored too long. I mean it. You don't have to carry this. Annie looked at her then. I'm not carrying it. I'm labeling it correctly. Leah laughed, and the sound moved through Studio C with such unexpected ease that two interns looked up and smiled. On the morning of the show, rain fell over New York in thin gray sheets. Annie woke before her alarm and found Leah already dressed, sitting at the kitchen table with their mother's red coat in front of her. Not the new runway piece, the old one. Worn cuff, missing button, frayed lining. You okay? Annie asked. Leah touched the cuff. I wish she could see it. Annie sat across from her. Maybe she can. Leah gave her a look. Don't get poetic before coffee. I'm serious. I know. That's why I'm stopping you. Annie smiled, but her eyes burned. Leah folded the coat carefully and placed it in a garment box. I'm bringing it. To the show? Yes. Will it be on display? No, Leah said. It's just coming. That made sense to Annie in a way she could not explain. Some witnesses did not need to testify. They only needed to be present. At Velora House, the lobby looked almost unfamiliar. The reception desk had been moved back. The runway lights were being tested. Models waited upstairs. Staff moved with clipboards and headsets. Cameras had been limited. Interviews controlled. Guest lists shortened. Patrice stood near the entrance reviewing final press terms with Daniel. Marcus checked a monitor by the security desk, where the live feed would record everything this time. Evelyn stood by the first row in a navy dress and comfortable shoes, telling a board member he was sitting in Denise Powell's chair. I believe this is front row, the man said. I believe you can read the name card, Evelyn answered. He moved. Annie saw Victor near the center of the lobby, speaking to Elaine. He wore a dark suit and the silver watch. When he saw Leah, he stopped mid-sentence. The room did too, not all at once, but in small waves. Leah walked through the lobby doors carrying the garment box herself. Annie walked beside her. Nobody rushed them. Nobody blocked them. Nobody asked for a badge. At the spot near the elevators where Annie had first cried for help, Leah paused. Annie knew exactly where they were. Leah did too. You stood here? Leah asked quietly. Annie nodded. About here. Leah looked at the marble floor. I'm sorry. Don't. I am. Annie swallowed. Then I'm sorry you were upstairs on the floor. Leah closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them. All right, we're both sorry. Now we walk. They walked. Backstage. The red coat that would open the show hung alone. It was not their mother's coat, but it carried its memory. The fabric was deep red, rich without being loud. The collar rose cleanly. The torn cuff idea had become an opening at the wrist, edged with fine stitching. Inside the lining, not hidden but placed where it could be shown, was a label. Leah Carter, with contributions by Mia Alvarez, Denise Powell, Tomas Vega, Harriet Kim, Caleb Ortiz, and the Valora House sample and pattern teams. Annie read it 3 times. Leah watched her. "Did I miss anyone?" "No," Annie said. "I checked. I know." That trust made Annie stand a little straighter. Victor entered the backstage area only after asking permission. Annie noticed that too. "Miss Carter," he said, "the audience is seated. We begin when you're ready." Leah looked toward the curtain. Beyond it, voices blended into one low sound. Buyers, editors, employees, board members, people waiting to decide what the story meant. Leah's hands were still for a moment. Then she opened the garment box and touched the old church coat inside. "I need 1 minute," she said. Victor nodded and left. Annie stayed. Leah looked at the old coat, then at the new one. "Mama used to say, don't enter a room like you're asking the floor to hold you." Annie smiled through the tightness in her throat. She said floors were made for feet, and bills were made by devils. "That too." Leah laughed softly. Then she closed the box. The first model stepped into the red coat. Leah adjusted the cuff herself. Her fingers did not shake. Outside, the lights dimmed. A hush moved through the lobby. Annie stood beside Leah near the curtain, close enough to hear her breathe. On the other side of the wall, in the same building where her sister had been ignored, dismissed, threatened, and left on a storage room floor, people waited for Leah Carter's work to enter first. The music began, low and steady. Leah looked at the model, then at Annie. "Open the door," she said. The model stepped forward. For 1 second, there was only the sound of fabric moving. Then the red coat entered the lobby. Annie stood behind the curtain with both hands pressed together, not praying exactly, but close. She watched the model walk across the same marble floor where she had once stood shaking, asking a man who did not know her name to help her sister. Now that floor held Leah's first look. Not Margaret's. Not Quiet Fire. Not a cleaned-up version of somebody else's story. Still standing, the coat did not beg for attention. It took space without asking. The high collar framed the model's face. The cuff opened at the wrist like a scar that had learned how to breathe. Under the runway lights, the red looked deep and steady, not like blood, not like anger, but like something that had survived washing, winter, church pews, hospital rooms, and rent envelopes. The audience did not clap at first. They were too busy looking. Leah stood beside Annie, still as a held breath. Then Evelyn started. One clap, firm, plain, impossible to mistake. Denise joined her. Then Mia, Tomas, Caleb, Harriet. The sound spread through the first row, then behind it, then across the lobby until buyers, editors, and board members were clapping too. Some because they understood. Some because the room had moved before they could decide how to behave. It did not matter. The first sound belonged to the workers. Leah's mouth trembled. Annie whispered, "Don't cry before look 2. Leah let out a breath that almost became a laugh. Bossy. Accurate. The second look followed, the white suit. Its shoulders carried the strength Leah had drawn into them months ago under fluorescent lights while Annie ate crackers near the sample shelves. The model turned at the end of the runway, and for a moment the cuff faced the audience. The initials were no longer hidden. A small projected image appeared on the wall beside the runway. Not dramatic, not oversized, simply clear. L. Chi. Below it, Leah Carter, original design. Pattern development, Denise Powell. Sample coordination, Caleb Ortiz. Annie looked toward the first row. Denise wiped her eyes quickly and pretended she had not. Caleb stared at the floor, smiling like he was afraid someone might take the moment back if he enjoyed it too openly. They did not take it back. Look after look moved through the lobby. The black dress with grief held high. The blue dress with Tomas's sleeve structure credited in the program. Harriet's color story. Mia's jacket concept, restored and sharpened, with her name printed where people could see it. Some pieces carried Leah's hand more clearly. Others carried the labor of many. This time, the audience knew. Victor watched from the side, not seated in the front row. He had given that chair to a pattern maker who had worked at Valora House for 31 years and never attended a show from anywhere but backstage. His silver watch caught the light when he folded his hands. Annie wondered what his wife would have thought of this. Maybe she would have said it was late. Maybe she would have said late was not the same as never. Near the end, Leah stepped closer to the curtain. Annie looked at her. "You're not supposed to go out yet. I changed the order." "When?" "About 5 seconds ago." "Leah." Her sister looked pale but certain. "Help me." Annie did. Leah had chosen a simple black outfit, nothing that pulled attention from the clothes. Annie straightened the sleeve, then stepped back. "You sure?" "No," Leah said. "But I'm going." The final model cleared the runway. The music softened. For a moment, the audience waited, expecting the usual designer bow. They expected Leah to step out, smile, accept applause, maybe cry in a way that photographed well. Leah walked out holding their mother's old red church coat, not wearing it, holding it. The lobby fell quiet. She stopped at the center of the runway, near the place where Annie had once begged. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "This is the coat that started the collection," Leah said. "It belonged to my mother. The cuff is worn. The lining is tired. Some people would call it ruined. I kept it because my mother wore it when she wanted to look strong, even when life was not gentle with her." No one moved. Leah looked toward the first row. Still, standing is not about one person. It is not about being unhurt. It is about the work people do after they have been overlooked, underpaid, borrowed from, spoken over, or told to be grateful for less than they earned. Annie felt tears slip down her face. She did not wipe them. Leah continued. "Every name in this program belongs there. Every stitch came from someone's hands. Every correction matters. If this collection means anything, let it mean this. No one should have to hide their name inside a cuff to prove they were here." The room was silent for one more beat. Then the applause came hard. Not polite, not fashionable. Human. Evelyn stood first. Denise stood next. Soon the whole first row was on its feet. Then the rows behind them. Leah looked overwhelmed, and Annie took one step forward from behind the curtain without meaning to. Leah saw her and held out a hand. Annie shook her head at first. Leah kept holding it out. So Annie walked onto the runway. She did not belong to fashion. She did not know what to do with that much light. Her sneakers were worn. Her coat was old. And her face was wet with tears. But when she reached Leah, her sister took her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "This is Annie," Leah said, and the microphone caught the softness in her voice. She remembered when everyone else hoped I would forget. The applause changed again. Annie looked down, embarrassed. But Leah squeezed her hand. Victor stepped forward only when Leah turned toward him. He did not take the center. He stopped at the edge of the runway. "Miss Carter," he said, "Valora House is honored to present your collection." Leah looked at him for a long moment. "Then honor the people who made it possible." Victor nodded. "We will." Evelyn called from the first row, in writing. A wave of laughter moved through the room, relieved and real. Victor almost smiled. "In writing, Mrs. Brooks." Months later, people would write about that show. Some would call it historic. Some would call it a reckoning. Some would still try to make it neater than it was. They would mention the scandal, the audit, the settlement Margaret Sloan eventually signed without admitting what everyone had seen. They would mention the credit council, the back pay, the changed complaint system, the scholarship fund renamed not after Victor, but after the workers who had built the house from the lower floors up. But Annie would remember other things. Leah sitting at the kitchen table the night after the show, eating cold noodles from a takeout box because she was too tired to celebrate properly. Evelyn complaining that fame had not improved hospital coffee or rich people's manners. Victor sending a handwritten note with no speech in it, only 3 words, "I am listening." And Leah, 3 weeks later, standing in Studio C as lead designer, not protected by kindness but by contract, credit, and the eyes of people who no longer looked away. Annie went back to school. She still carried the old canvas bag. Though Leah bought her a new one she refused to use until the strap finally broke. Sometimes people recognized her from the video or the show and called her brave. Bravery, to Annie, still felt like fear with no other place to go. One evening, she met Leah outside Valora House after class. The lobby doors opened, and employees came out in small groups. Mia waved. Caleb nodded. Denise shouted that Annie looked too skinny and needed dinner. Evelyn came last, pushing her cleaning cart toward the service hall, then stopping to point at the polished marble. "You see that floor?" Evelyn said. Annie smiled. "Yes, ma'am. It shines different when people stop kneeling on it." Leah laughed softly. Annie looked across the lobby to the spot where it had all begun. She could still see herself there, trembling, unheard, almost turned away. Then she looked at Leah beside her, alive, credited, tired, stubborn, still standing. Leah followed her gaze. "You thinking about that day?" "A little. I was wrong to tell you not to say anything." "I know." Leah bumped her shoulder gently. "You could pretend to argue." "No." They stepped out into the evening together. New York moved around them, loud and impatient. But Annie did not feel swallowed by it. For once, the city seemed less like a wall and more like a road. At the corner, Leah took Annie's hand the way she had when they were children crossing busy streets. Annie looked at her. "You don't have to do that anymore." Leah smiled. "I know," but she did not let go. And Annie, who had once run through a marble lobby begging someone to help her sister, held on too. The lesson of this story is that truth may be quiet for a long time, but it does not disappear. Leah's journey reminds us that talent deserves recognition, no matter where it comes from, and that no one should be forced to hide their name, their pain, or their worth just to survive. Annie's courage shows that one honest voice can open a door for many others who have been silenced. In the end, justice is not only about punishing the wrongdoer, it is about restoring dignity, giving credit where it belongs, and building a world where people are seen before they are erased. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.